Previously on Not My Fantasy.
So you know that trend that okay, hear me out. So it'll be like why someone's hot.
Sure.
Sure.
And but people do it with like celebrities or whatever. So someone asked me, who's your okay,
Okay,
hear
wait,
me
hear me.
out. But the example they gave were the sharks from Finding Nemo.
No, no.
And they said what's a basic answer would be the fish, like Gil from Finding Nemo.
Mm.
So this is where I was given this, and I had realized I hadn't thought of it. I thought of celebrity crushes. So eventually I said, there I'm like, does it have to be animated? Does it have to be, and it's to be an actor. I said, the guy in About Time is cool. Like he's charming. I could see that. And then end up
Yeah.
being like, maybe a Bionicle. um Hi, not my fam to see. Welcome back to Not My Fantasy, the show where we talk about fantasy films and the lore that inspired them. I'm Cullen.
And I'm Hannah.
And today we have my dear, dear college friend, John Gossett.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
He's a first name, last name person. Like it was
Nice.
always like, I feel like a lot of times it's just like John Gossett. Like there was a girl who had a crush
Mhm.
on him, and we just apropos of nothing, would just be like, John Gossett. And she'd be like, stop.
There's also a lot of Johns. I myself am not the only John Gossett in existence, so
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, there are definitely people who I think like it's always first name, last name.
Yeah.
But for
And
some
there's
reason I can't think of any right now, but I do know like I have to do that.
And there are some that it's like never. Like when I think, okay, yeah, Hannah Sylvester, I have to like double like wait. I
No.
think I thought about it more in Glee Boot because of your last name, but being in the show.
Yeah,
But
right.
yeah, it's 9
True.
a.m. in California. I was at Disneyland yesterday. I'm sipping from my Princess Aurora mug or straw thingy, but
It's
it is.
noon for
We're
me.
talking about
Yep.
Bionicles.
Okay. I don't remember what we were talking about before I was like, you got to record right now because I have stuff to say. So hopefully it comes back up because I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, we're talking Bionicles. Happy Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We're doing two apps. Chronologically, though, this is the first one we're recording, but this will come right after Moana,
Yeah.
uh,
okay.
a movie that is explicitly based in an amalgamation of cultures.
Hmm.
But we're talking about something that borrows from a culture and caused some controversy. Before I get into it, John's criteria to be on the stuff that is like, did you have a Bionicle ever? So what is your knowledge, experience, memory of Bionicles before now? And specifically, we're talking about the 2003 film, Bionicle: The Mask of Light.
Hmm.
But just experience with the movie or Bionicles in general.
I had Bionicles when I was younger. I remember I got them as a Christmas gift somewhere in the era of 2002 to 2004, I'm sure. A nice little 8-year-old John. Um, I think I had like three or four of them. I think I had this brown guy here and the green one specifically, whose names escaped me. And I had watched the movie when I was younger, The Mask of Light. The recent viewing was the second time, with 20 years in between the previous viewing. It's very fun to re-explore. But the lore, like other than anything like surface, I'm not super familiar with. I'm excited to get into that, see how that ties in with our fun biomechanical friends.
Yeah. Speaking of mechanics, I would like to thank Popular Mechanics for the graphic that is behind me. It's
Beautiful.
beautiful. I think it captures the frenzy of Bionicles, the frenzy I experienced while watching the movie last night. desperately trying to figure out what the fuck was happening. Um, so I vaguely remember Bionicles existing because I remember seeing commercials on like Nickelodeon or whatever. Aside from that, did not have Bionicles. And I kind of was like, I hesitated to make fun of it because I was like, this is just like typical kids' toys where they have like weird, powers and it's just like a weird culture around this toy. And I'm like, I played with Polly Pockets. I played with something called a What's Her Face doll. I played with Betty Spaghetti. And I don't know if you guys are familiar
Betty
with those.
Spaghetti. I
I
do
mean, Betty
remember a Betty
Spaghetti is
Spaghetti.
famous for her lore. Yeah.
But like if you think about just like I think it was probably the same era, like 7, 8, 9 years old, uh, is that like there were weird toys. And so I feel like this is just like one of those subsets of like
Hmm.
just so odd.
Absolutely.
So like I wanted to make fun of it, but then I was like, I play with weird shit too. And so it's like that's just kid stuff. Um, I remember the thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll
Yeah.
just say it really quick, is that I think John had mentioned before we started recording, like, I cannot remember anyone's name. I was like, that's so funny, me either, even though 85% of this movie's dialogue is just saying people's names.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
And so it's like, how is it still escaping me? I still don't know who is who. Thank God they're color coded. But
Yep.
yeah, did not have Bionicles. I didn't have any boy cousins. So like this toy was obviously marketed toward boys. I didn't have any boy cousins until I was like a high schooler, so I would not have ever interacted with a Bionicle. So,
Mm.
fun fact.
So there was a time in my life where I would have described this as my favorite movie. Um,
Oh wow.
Man, I wish I would have known you then.
and
Uh,
there's shame there. I think about watching this at my grandparents, and I think of like my grandfather like fighting in wars, and then he also experienced this movie.
is this the same one that helped build the Epcot ball?
No,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
but different. This is on my mother's side, but like. I mean, I always called him Pat Harding American Hero, but part of his lifespan on this earth was experiencing this film tangentially, and I don't know if that sits right with me. But
Mm-hmm.
just
You know, sometimes a man has to go through multiple wars, you know?
truly.
Um
uh, and uh so I watched it a million times. I even tried to get some of my friends to watch it, but I was shut down by their parents because it had false gods.
Mm-hmm.
mm.
And I did make my friends Katie and Buckles, we remember from Pinocchio True Story. This was a shitty movie night viewing.
Oh,
And we
I would have
made
killed to be a fly on the wall in that room.
and whenever Katie would have like get up and go to the bathroom, we would pause the movie. And she was really bitter because when we watched Food Fight, like we fell asleep and missed part of it. But we're like, no, you're experiencing every minute of the Bionicle movie, and she's still mad about it.
As she should be.
Wonderful.
Yeah, as she should be. Also, that I don't know, mentally, I went to the Renaissance Fair recently. That's a fantasy thing, so I feel like I should mention that I did that.
Did you dress up as a Bionicle? Did
No,
you have the mask?
but that will
Next year, floral Bionicle mask for Ren Fair.
Floral Bionicle. So
Mm-hmm.
I did dress as a Bionicle for Halloween once,
Mm.
and for my
Nice.
orthodontist ice skating party.
I I have a
Yeah,
thing to add, and I don't know
yeah.
where in the edit I'm going to put this, but it's a clip from our previous episode of About Time where we had talked about the hear me out type of like, okay, some people don't think this person's hot, but like hear me out.
Okay,
This person's hot.
I
Okay, no,
think
no, 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 no.
important
Let me
context.
finish. Let women speak.
I'm so excited.
And in our brief conversation, Cullen was like, okay, I think Donald Gleason from About Time could be my okay, hear me out. And then you also said, and then perhaps one of the Bionicles.
Because
So
okay.
I'm gonna Hannah add that in the clip here, because I saved it because I was so I explain yourself.
Beautiful.
You can
So
I'm finished.
beautiful.
I would like to explain that the context I was given was that the fish Gil from Finding Nemo was a normie answer and doesn't count as a hear me out. Not that he's one of mine, but that like I had to think of something more unhinged than a talking CGI fish.
Got
That
it.
was so I was like they're like, but the sharks from Finding Nemo are a hear me out. And so I was trying to be like, what super freaky thing? Like, I don't know. Like, I was like,
But now I'm curious, which Bionicle?
the
And
same
also,
one.
they're all hinges. What are you talking about?
They're all hinges.
There you go.
So this will be a little game for you. I also dress up as this Bionicle. This is what I dress up as for Halloween. And so I want you to, as we go through this discussion, guess. Like, be like, I think it was this one.
It was the gold one.
Like,
But
Takanuva?
who?
You're gonna be throwing names at us.
No, you
for
have to
kicking,
keep
like,
the
we're gonna miss
colors.
every name. The only name
Colors.
I know is Jala because that he dies at the end, and then they put his head on the front of a flying motorcycle as a hood ornament. And like, okay, like I will at least give him the respect of learning that man's name because they did not care. And then they drove him into a
Yeah.
wall.
My
Yeah.
boyfriend said basically the same thing. Was like, I can't believe they just put his face on that motorcycle.
And I apologize if I'm jumping the gun with going straight to the end,
No.
like third act of this movie. But
Spoilers.
Okay, so
Okay.
my last thing is
Yeah.
I was gonna write notes of like Lyle's like, oh yeah, I remember this. There's not much of that. My boyfriend basically we started with he said I had the big bad Bionicle and then the pseudo Jesus character, which turns out to be the gold one.
Takanuva.
Sure. And then he also like at the beginning of the movie they're in like a lava thing
Yeah.
getting the mask, like right when we get the mask. Uh we as if I was like invested in this movie.
You were, because it's great.
You certainly are.
But he's like, "Oh yeah, I had the video game and I remember playing this lava level."
Yeah. That's one of the video game had 8 levels. And that was level 7. So the
Yep.
entire Mask of Light storyline was 2 levels with the video game.
Cute.
So I had that video game. So I was obsessed with Bionicles. So I was like at that age, I remember getting one of the Bow Rock from, which we're like, I'll explain what that is, from like toys, like a toy store in the mall, which like we never went to the mall. So that was like, wow. And then I remember getting Tahu, the red guy behind both of your heads, when I got out of the hospital from pneumonia. I was in like intensive care and I was like in the hospital for my birthday, and then came back and I like my grandma had gotten me the red Bionicle and being like, yes. He was like my favorite of the Toa. I always liked the fire guys. It was the same Captain Planet. And I think because of red hair, but representation matters, you know. But so I was like so into them, and I fell down the lore rabbit hole. I like knew all about the lore. I read the books. So like Bionicle,
As a kid.
yeah. So the lore
Okay.
wasn't like super segmented. It was
I'm
like
in college.
yeah, my entire dorm room was Bionicles. Like
I
it
do have
was
a story about that, about a Bionicle kid in college, but that is for later.
so there were like books, there were comic books that came in like a magazine, because at first my parents were like, this is too like new agey, and then eventually they're like, it's fine. So there was comic books in the magazine, those were free, and then there were books. There was an online game. There are 2 online games, and like flash games. There's a video game, there are the movies, and like so, and like little flash anime. So like lore, like you had to like hunt and piece together all this lore. I also had the Bionicle Encyclopedia, but
Wonderful.
it came out in 2005, so it's only like half the lore. Like it doesn't even have any spoilers for the 2005 storyline. I would also make little like fan movies of them. I also had the Bionicle, like some of the board games, but there's like a fan, like I did it with my siblings, and it would be about like actual lore, but my siblings were like, I don't know what you're talking about. But like we would like make the bat, like we would have like the flying ones, like we'd tie them to like our like pergola with strings and like swoop them down, and we'd like throw water on them from the water ones, and we'd have like I did one that was supposed to be stop motion, and I had like different animal like toys interacting with them, and so I just was super into them. And I also I realized I basically wrote fanfic of them in my head as a kid, because my siblings, they really probably should, you know, that's what siblings do. They tell you things that they shouldn't. They would tell me that they're like, well, how do they reproduce if like about their like, so then I was thinking about like how they're supposed to like have more Bionicles. So it was like, so my first thoughts about sex, I guess, were related to Bionicles because my siblings like imposing that onto like, oh well, how do they
Yeah.
reproduce? Because
Uh-huh.
and they're like, do they reproduce asexually? And as we know, I've always loved romance, so like that didn't hit with me, but like I like sex and romance weren't two separate concepts in my brain yet.
Mm.
So
Right.
it's kind of upsetting to think about that, but you know, we all weird things happen.
Yeah.
Especially when you're homeschooled.
I do
Um,
imagine that these would be great for stop motion film. You know, they're
Yeah.
very, you know,
yeah.
you get the framing pretty well, I'm sure.
Yeah. They were like construction figures is what Lego called them internally because they were action figures that you constructed.
Ah.
Oh, construction. Nice.
Yeah. So yes, and I did dress as a Bionicle. Yeah, but
Do you
okay.
still have that mask?
I
That'd be
don't,
awesome.
or it might be somewhere in my mom's basement.
Basement in your
Because in
classroom.
my classroom, if I found it now, I don't think I would throw it away, but there's maybe a time when I would have. Oh, but speaking of which, I remember a couple Christmases ago, I came home and I like got rid of like a bunch of toys in the basement. So we had already, I think we had already sold the Bionicles because I had a big collection because I really liked them. And um, I think I stopped getting like later middle school. I was kind of like, you know, I was starting to lose interest. So around like 2007 was probably the time I had a couple. And then the storyline, I start to pick up on the repetitiveness and was like, okay, I can't. Um, so I have Takua.
Oh,
Wow, in the flesh
I
or in
have
the
the Pepsi
plastic.
Man Bionicle.
I have
Yes.
Jala here.
He's
Nice.
alive.
And I
Salute him.
have Holly.
Okay.
So those were the
Okay.
ones I kept. I was like, I want like our three leads. Um,
And they're little enough too that like,
yeah, it's like they're not cumbersome. I just keep them. I
yeah.
have a drawer with like the few like toys from childhood I kept, like some from Narnia, some from like different Disney characters. It's like you got all seven doors, don't get rid of them, you know?
And
Um,
and like that is one specific question I have. Like, given like you've got the two main characters that are like kids, presumably in this, and like they're small, but like everybody in this is like 2.5 feet tall, unless you're one of the six of the chosen, and then you're like
Yeah.
6.5 feet tall. It's just like you're the mark of importance is an extra 4 feet in height. As soon as he gets the mask, he's like, yes. I have ascended to tall person
tall
now.
person. But
Yeah.
that's something people debate
He had
on
that leg
whether
lengthening surgery in front of us.
Yeah, right.
the leg lift. People debate as to whether or not like Matoran are child coded or whether they're like because technically they're like thousands of years old in canon, but
Oh.
like at some point they had their memory
Hannah.
wiped. But like they also decided like they chose in the movie to have like young adults play them.
Right.
So it's like they're supposed to be like the window in, and we'll talk about how that kind of ended up happening.
This is
But
a
first,
memory wipe here. The
oh
plot is
boy, the
thickening.
plot. Oh gosh. Okay, so this movie, let's talk about the moving picture first, quickly. So it's directed by Terry Shakespeare and David Molina and produced by Sue Shakespeare of Creative Capers Entertainment. They kind of
Are they related to the
Yes,
William
double
Shakespeare?
direct Shakespeare involvement. This was
yeah,
supposed to be grade A.
The
this
Bard.
is Shakespearean. When I say Shakespearean, this is what I'm talking about.
The
Uh,
Bard and the
Yeah.
Bionicles.
Yes.
yeah, it was written by Alistair Swinnerton, Henry Gilroy, and Greg Wiseman.
Okay.
Stars Jason Mikas as Takua Takanuva, Andrew Francis as Jala, who also played the captain of the guard in the My Little Pony universe. I love
As they
look,
typecasted.
yeah. Scott McNeil as Tahu Toa of Fire, Onawa Toa of Earth, and the Bear. Uh,
Like the
Dale,
bear?
yeah.
That's fascinating.
Love it when
Dale
a main character also plays the bear.
also plays the bear. Like, we got you in here. Can you do some grunts? Well, honestly, from what I know about scratch recording in animation, that is pretty common.
I mean, we got the same guy playing like Appa and Momo and Avatar, you know, and just like, yeah, this is my job.
uh,
Who's also
uh,
all of the clones in Clone Wars.
I mean, Alan Tudyk in Moana as that
Yep.
chicken.
Yeah.
Dale Wilson as Liwa Toa of Air and Taraga Oniwa. Kathleen
Okay.
Barr as Gally Toa of Water. She also voiced someone on Liberty's Kids, which was a favorite show of my siblings.
Uh-huh.
Lee Talker as the Makuta and Puku, the crab. Christopher Gaze as
I knew that crab was
Kama.
evil.
Leslie Ewan as Taraga no Kama. Michael Dobson as Kopaka, the Toa of Ice, and Huki. Trevor Diwali as Pahatu Toa of Stone, and Kiara Zani as Hali. It was a wildly successful DVD and a commercial success. It was made in just 13 months.
It
And
shows.
it was the second highest selling VHS on Amazon after The Two Towers.
That's a really
Wow.
weird statistic.
Yeah.
As a point of time referencing, I'm referencing my film sales based off of. Oh wait, Two Towers is in
The Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Okay, my brain went the other way with that.
Well, we'll go to the
I
will
was
9/11
why
will
is
come
this
up
a
today.
date point? I'm so confused.
Well,
That's
these came out in
interesting because
2000. No, these came out in
2003, but 9/11 will be relevant later.
Okay, well, like Bionicle was originally released in what
2001.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my brain went to the jumping up. There we go. Okay. There was a reason behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, I did find the beginning of this movie very Lord of the Rings coded.
This is
because,
very Lord of the Rings coded as a movie. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then also because, again, I was desperately trying to figure out what the hell the narrator was talking about. Because every time we talked about it in our Lord of the Rings episode, that every time I watched that first movie, that long monologue and montage, I'm like trying to grasp information, trying to remember names, and it takes me a very long time into the first movie to really understand what's going on. But yeah.
This was distributed by Disney and Miramax.
Mhm.
And Disney kind of connected them with the animation studio because they do a lot of the stuff for the parks and video games for Disney. There are 3 sequels. Well, technically 2 of them are prequels and 1 is a distant sequel. And there was a Netflix animated series for the reboot in 2015. So to get into the lore of Bionicle, we're in the late 90s and Lego is struggling. They're in their flop era. Things are expensive. Pokemon is like destroying them.
Yeah.
They're like, who wants Lego when you can Pika Pika, you know? So
Yep.
they get the rights to Star Wars, Harry Potter, Winnie the Pooh, and those do well, but that's expensive. So they're like, we need our own IP. And they start coming up with something called Boneheads of Voodoo Island that like throw their heads at each other. And then people were like, wait, this sucks. So then a guy was thinking, I think it was Alistair, he was thinking about like the pills he took to fight his illness. Yeah, he had this thought a while before, and he thought of them as like little warriors fighting disease. And he's like, huh. And so he came up with
Osmosis Jones.
He came up with
There you go. Love it.
A biological chronicle, Bionicle. And they came in canisters like pills.
I did eat one of those once. No.
One of the
those
canisters were
college.
big. That'd be quite the party.
So
trick
that's
to shove
what
a Bionicle canister.
So that's what Bionicle is, biological what was it?
Chronicle.
Biological chronicle?
Yeah, especially because Takua's job, he's a chronicler.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So a living story.
Yes.
But they're bones, robots,
they're
rocks.
They're living in, they're biomechanical, so they're organic and mechanical.
Right. Yeah.
But we'll get into what they are a little bit. Okay, so a problem came up because they kept Polynesian flair, because that was like they're trying to be different. And this is kind of, I think, before cultural appropriation really was a thing people thought about. Now it's a very
Right.
common thing, but no one like, I mean, this was like the late 90s, early 2000s, right?
People weren't being like called out for it as much, as
Yeah,
prominently.
Yeah.
yeah.
Still existent, but like, yeah, not
Yeah,
as
it
like
existed,
forward
but
facing as a way, like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it existed, but people didn't care. Or
Yeah,
not
like
like,
your studio, your film wasn't gonna get canceled for it, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
That wasn't until Gods of Egypt, when the goddess Isis was so mad for how that movie shafted her, she made white people care about other cultures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to our Gods of Egypt episode
Yeah.
and salads.
And so, ooh. So, some of the words were like things like Tahu, the fire guy, that meant like to burn, but others were like the Matoran were initially called Tohunga, which is a word in the Maori culture for like a skilled healer or priest.
Okay.
And so there was the Maori threatened legal action because they're like, you're kind of appropriating our
So
culture. You know, you're
the
using words.
they so the person who was like creating this, he literally just was like, "Oh, I like this idea, all these
Yeah.
ideas from the Maori culture," and just took
Yeah.
it.
They just took a
Like he
book.
did it like,
They found a book, because this is before
okay.
Google. They found a book of Maori words and found some other like Polynesian languages, and just started using them.
Oh, just a dictionary.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
I thought it was like, oh, there was like a lore book or something. Like
There was some people who like said this is similar to some Maori stories.
right.
So like the thing is, this is something people talk about on the internet a lot, but I was looking for actual like sources of what was going on. There was some references to the legal battle, but there wasn't like a ton of like concrete, like I could say this on God's internet with certainty facts, you
Yeah.
know. So it was settled out of court, and name changes were made, but some of them were smaller ones, like they changed the spelling of like Jala's name. There was a great naming ceremony that they like put in to like come up with the lore reason why people's like name spelling changed. um but it also like they were like, well, only as much, like we didn't want to change brand integrity. So some of them kept things like words like Toa, which meant warrior, Tahu, Mata Nui, like those were kept. Yes.
Since technically Moana has already happened,
Yeah.
is that Motunui word the same as the name of the island that she lives on?
So
Or her
yeah, so
village?
she's in Mata Nui, which is like I think Nui is like island.
Okay.
And then like so Mata Nui is Face Island, I believe.
Okay.
And
I
Mata
didn't
Nui is
because they sound similar, but I didn't
they're
know if they
different, but they
were.
sound
Okay.
similar, and there
Got it.
are other real life places that have very similar names.
Got it.
Okay.
So they kept some things, and then other things like Tohunga, especially because that was one of the biggest offenders, was your normie villagers. It's like having, here's the villagers of rabbis. Let's save the little rabbis, you know. So they like changed the name to like that was probably the biggest one, and they made a promise to like take cultural consideration into process, because you know Lego did take it very seriously, but I'm also like, when did Johnny Thunder Adventures in the Orient come out? Because I was like, wow.
Hmm.
um and there's also Bionicle recently had a blip in modern discourse where there's this very semi-popular article of the Bionicle to trans pipeline that a lot of trans femmes really like Bionicles. Some people were like, is this because Bionicles were just really popular? Is this just attributed to like the lack of focus on gender compared to other franchises?
Mm-hmm.
And so you could kind of forget about a lot of gendered things. Or that like the crew, one of the Greg Farshty, who like at a certain point was like the kind of in charge of all the Bionicle lore, said that like gender was more of like a state of mind for them. Uh
Hmm.
so because blue does equal girl mostly in this universe. And they mentioned that, well,
Right.
then Takua, our lead, has a blue mask. So that's interesting.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
While
uh,
also being a red guy, yeah.
yeah. So it's like none of that is like intentional on the creator's part, you know, and the
Right.
creator of the article, which we can link, like did reach out to Greg Farshid. And he was just like, I don't know, but I guess people like it, so that's cool. So I just thought that's like important to mention. But Bionicle, it ended up being a huge success. It ran from 2001 to 2010, rebooted briefly in 2015 and 2016. It saved the Lego company. So a lot of people like to give it to Star Wars because Star Wars fans are rabid, but the licensing of Star Wars was expensive. So Bionicle like put like the Lego we have today with Chris Pratt, Lego, Ninjago, all the licensing on those Lego games is because of Bionicle. Bionicle was interesting though because it ran for such a long time that its lore ended up being its own death because new kids couldn't come into it because there's so much preceding lore.
Yeah.
Because usually
Makes
toys
sense.
go in a shorter cycle because like kids aged out. Like I was super into it, but I aged out. Like I didn't want to be in 8th grade being like, look at my Bionicle, like you kids grow up. So that was kind of like the change. I remember we would still get the Lego magazine to our address for a while. And so I would sometimes like look at the comic or be like, oh, what are the Bionicles up to? But like I wasn't gonna buy a Bionicle.
Yeah.
But it was huge. It was games, comic books, novels, movies, 2 hugely popular online Flash games. The first one is kind of considered a masterwork of art, the Mata Nui online game, of Flash games, I should clarify, not of art in general, of Flash game art. Because they're supposed to have a video game about the Toa that was like the main storyline, but it was canceled. And so the Mata Nui online game, which was released in like chapters, became the main storytelling vehicle, and it was centered on the Matoran. And the people making it were in New York at the time of 9/11. And so that influenced how like Makuta was depicted initially, where became their like he's decay, he's fear, he's darkness, as opposed to just like he was supposed to be more like Skeletor, like early on. Now I think eventually he took those traits, leaned back into that a little more, but in the first online game when the Toa meet him, he's like he appears as a Matoran, and it's just like darkness. So that was really popular. There's also Mata Nui Online Game 2. So Mata Nui Online Game 1 followed Takua gathering the Matoran after he had summoned the Toa. And then Mata Nui Online Game 2 we'll get to. So let's start with our 2001 story. Oh, before, this is also a big risk for Lego because it had implied like there was good versus evil, there was violence. Because they had knights and pirates, but there weren't like storylines as to why they were fighting each other. That was all up to the child. So it was new that they were giving children a storyline, and that storyline involved some form of violence. So this was a big thing. Lego was very big in their brands and child safety, which people talk about that's why their MMORPG, like their online game, flopped because Lego wanted to prioritize this making a safe space for children, which is good. But that form of media is just inherently an unsafe thing. So in order to make it have
a
like
massively multiplayer online RPG safe for kids,
they were like, how do we stop people from building Lego dicks? And that software was so expansive that it ended up like not being worth running. Which is sad. It made me a little sad about humanity. So 2001, when Lego was on the scene, it's about the island of Mata Nui and the Matoran villagers. They're being attacked by Rahi, which are animals. Rahi is the word for animal, and they're infected by the evils of the Makuta, who's the brother of the great spirit Mata Nui. Mata Nui is asleep, and so they're trying to await the 6th Toa. So Takua accidentally summons the 6th Toa. So the Matoran are in 6 communities, 6 villagers called Koros. And they are centered in areas called Wahis, which is like the natural area, the Koros, the village. So if you look at this island map behind me, there's like 6 regions roughly. There's
the island behind you, what is that?
That's Mata Nui. That's where this story takes place.
Got it. Okay.
Solid.
Yeah. So this like volcanic line to the volcano, that's Tawahi, right? The jungles, that's Liwahi. Though there's clouds over it, but there's like a bay, that's Gawahi. We have the ice Mount Aihu, that's Kowahi. And there's like the desert of Powahi, and Onukoro and Onuwahi always confuse me because they're shown on top of the island, but they only exist under the island. So I'm like, how does that work?
Inconsistency. Wow.
Yeah. The
They're there.
villages, the villages are led by elders called Taraka.
Mhm.
So
You know how
we,
you can tell that they're elders? Because they have hunchbacks.
yeah, that's
Mhm.
waiting us all at our office
Yep.
jobs. There's Onu Koro, so that's the mining village of Earth. Their color is black, but they also get a lot of purple and orange people. There's Kokoro, which is like the meditative village of ice, because they all have like a trade. And they're like white and light blue. There's Likoro, which is the jungle dwelling village of air. They're super into music. They wear green, and eventually they have like tree speak or something like that, which gets a little racially like
Mm,
coded.
mm.
And yeah, because it's like they're speaking in like a weird
Mm.
quasi English, and you're like, we could have just not put that in there.
We have an example in this movie.
Yes, yeah,
Yes. Because I spent a lot of time being like, what? I don't know how I feel about that.
yeah.
There's something funky going on with that.
There's Takora, which is the lava farming village of fire. They're the most like they have like their colors like red and yellow. They have the like they're the most militarized. There's Gakora, which is the all-female fishing village of water. They're blue. Um, there's Pokoro, and they are carvers and athletes of the village of stone. And so that's the brown color, but it was later became yellow along the tour line because the brown toys always sold the least because
Mm.
it's the
Mm.
poop color.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
So
There you go.
they were like, let's update it. So Takua, who's a wanderer troublemaker, he accidentally used Toa stones to summon the six Toa from their canisters. And they're these deity warriors that pop out, reassemble themselves, and don't know what's going on. And they had to go on a quest to collect masks called the Kanohi. So those are their masks, which are removable. Yeah. So they could wear
Wait,
different
what does his
masks.
face look like? Show us.
ugly.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Oh. Uh,
yeah.
so he he releases them, being these six
Yes. Behind you.
who
Yeah.
are already around in the movie at this point. But
Yes.
he finds another one of the tablets, which is then the sixth mask.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
but these ones, when they originally assembled, didn't have their own masks. They
They
had to
had
find
their
them.
each one. So each one that they're wearing, right? They each have a power. So like Gali has breathe underwater mask, Kopaka has X-ray vision, Tahu has force field, Powhatan has fast, Liwa has levitate, not fly. They were very specific about that. And Onoa has strength. And so they then have to find the masks. This was so you could sell collectible masks. Masks, each, there were six masks in their color, and they had to
Okay.
collect the masks. And then they were like, at first they
Oh.
were opposed and they had to ally together. This happened all the time with this team. It's like they're opposed, they have to ally together. And like, we just learned this. Uh,
Well, one of their
and
virtues is
unity.
unity. So,
Yes.
Absolutely.
We'll
Definitely put
get
that to use in that movie.
we'll definitely get to the three virtues. So they had to like learn to work together to collect all the masks, and then when they collect them all, they got gold ones that had all the powers. Um,
uh-huh.
and they had to go fight Makuta. Um, they thought they defeated him, but it set off the Rock swarms. Uh, but Takua helped them, and for this, he was named the Chronicler because he was one of the few people that wandered village to village. Because he was the protagonist of the game you're playing.
Mm.
So like he wanders, right? So that's kind of how Takua kind of became the protagonist as opposed to the Toa to some degree. For those true lore stands, but to most people it was about the Toa. Uh yeah, so that's our storyline 2001. And that's where we have Mata Nui online game. But two is the release of the Rock swarms, which are these chicken insect creatures that have a hive mind, and they serve two queens, and they're trying to destroy the island. And so they have six elemental powers. There's Rock and Rock Va, because the Rock Va carry the Krana. They have these brains inside their flippy little masks that you could like launch, and the Krata they would use to like knock off your mask and put this like fake mask on, and they would mind control you with it. You'd become part of the swarm.
Mm.
So they all had elemental powers, and they were trying to just like destroy the island. And so the Toa had to collect the Krana now, and put those in to go fight the Borak queens in these giant robo suits. But then they won and they fell into protodermis, which is like the magical goop.
Magical goop.
It's very central, and that they became the Toa Nuva, the Super Toa. So the characters you see in the movie are Toa Nuva. And I remember being really mad that they changed their design because I like the first designs better. And then later I was nostalgic for their designs. I always liked whatever was in the past more than what was current. At post this movie when it came out, I was like, this is so exciting. So then there was Super Toa, and then they had to fight. This is probably the laziest storyline. The Borak Kal, who were 6 super-powered Borak who had like powers like Sonic and Plasma. And the Toa Nuva, now that they were super powerful, they disagreed with each other and they went alone. And then the Borak Kal stole their powers. And then Tahu used the Mask of Time, which he suddenly had. And they defeated the Borak Kal with time. So happy time, post-time travel month.
The ocarina, I mean the Mask of Time.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So now that there's finally peace, they prep for a big Coley tournament, which is their like main sport.
Yep.
And now it's time for Mata Nui Online Game 2, where Holly travels around the island learning about Coley and each Koro's like virtue. So there was the 3 virtues: unity, duty, destiny.
Destiny's
then
not a virtue. I'm sorry. It's just not.
I mean, again, that got me as a kid too. I'm like, how do you practice destiny?
Just let whatever happens.
Because also this made me think about how much you're a free will stan, and I was
Yeah.
like, well then why would Cullen like this if destiny is one of their virtues? So I'm glad that you're like, no, I'm a free stan and have been since infancy.
Yes.
Destiny is not a virtue.
Destiny's not a virtue, and because you can't be destiny, and it's like
Destiny just happens to you.
The closest you could get, like, duty covers what destiny would cover. If
Right.
duty is doing what you're supposed to do, your destiny. There's one game, not related to Bionicles at all, that compared destiny and fate, which like destiny is like your highest potential and fate is your lowest potential. I was like, that's interesting. I do kind of like that, but because each village also had their own special virtue from the big 3. So Takoro fire, they had courage. Gakoro water had purity. But it was more like spiritual purity. It wasn't like chastity. I should clarify.
Right.
Yeah. Lee Koro, the air people, they had faith. The Earth village, Onokoro, had prosperity. The Stone village of Pokoro had creation. And Kokoro, the ice village, had peace. Now, people do often complain about why is there stone and earth?
Earth soft, stone hard. There you go.
Yeah, I think especially because the way they did Earth was not nature-y at all. It was just like physical Earth. I was like, there was a choice here where it's like if you wanted to desert people, because the stone village was desert, make them air, and then have a jungle village that's Earth.
I definitely thought in watching this was like the Earth one, and I was like, oh no, he's the air one, and he's green, and they're trying to make him Yoda because he doesn't talk right. Air, fly, go fast, speed fast, zoom, and then he's gone.
Yeah. So let's get into the movie. So now I've caught you up to the movie in the chronologically, and we will
have a lore question.
We will touch on post movie lore at the end. Yes.
Okay. But so the game that they play, the game that they play, do we have any notes on that? Like, is that something that's based on like Maori culture?
No,
because
I don't think
Lyle and I
so.
were talking about it last night, and we're like, it's kind of like some of it looks like lacrosse with like their sticks. So then it would be kind of based on like stickball from like different native
languages.
So
there's a
I just didn't know if
lacrosse
there was
element. It also reminds me of the game they play in Road to El Dorado.
Yes, but there's 3 teams, right?
Yeah, there isn't always 3 teams. It can be 2 to 6 teams.
Chaos.
I think John is muted.
I accidentally muted myself to cough and it didn't unmute when I clicked it. 3 teams is so weird in a game that might be structured like any point system, because at that
Yeah.
point, if you're just trying to get the 3 points, who are you focusing on to get points, or is it like become an elimination game? Once
know
you have
what?
three
Yeah.
people, are you scoring to like remove somebody for the game, then it goes to like a 1v1? It's like, what's going
So
on
many
here?
As
questions.
someone who played it in Mata Nui online game too, I don't know. I don't remember.
Fascinating.
And
But
Yeah. So my question about all this lore
yeah.
is there really a benefit to giving children all this lore and story when one of the key elements of toys is imagination? Like, is
Mm,
it potentially too much world building and story development? Because I guess we kind of talked about how like they got phased out because
yeah.
kids couldn't get into the massive amount of lore. So I guess I answered my own question. But like in general, I feel like the most successful toys would be the ones that have just enough that then kids can kind of run off with it, in my
See,
opinion. But I don't know.
I think that's what happened as because later on the layers got too much. Now, so
Yeah.
this, I know it's like I'm using all these words, but you think about it. 6 villages, different bad guys attack them. They each have a hero. And so
Yeah.
when we would play, like, and that's part of, I think, like why when it got like beyond this point is when I started to get annoyed with the storyline, is because it used to be very like simple and straightforward. And it got a little repetitive, but you could have changed that up. But it was like you had that frame and then you would and there was like deep lore and kin, but like we would tell our own stories
Right.
about them in this world, and we like basically just made crossover fanfics where like they all were somehow in the same storyline. And like we like even our different bow rockers we mindless, but we each one had like a personality. Like this one's the leader, this is the dumb one. Like the water one was like goofy and like, oh, I'm losing my brain. Like his brain would always fall out. Like we had our own personalities that we made for them.
Right.
But it was within, okay, we're on the island of Mata Nui. We have our villages that we're trying to defend.
So I
Um,
guess it's like it seems like this it's only too much for getting new kids onboarded
yeah.
after the older kids have offboarded. Because I
Yeah.
was thinking about like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon and stuff, and that like that is also like a huge amount of lore, but I guess the play is different. Like it's not just
Yeah.
action figures you make stories of. There's like literal like you interact with the powers of each creature with the card system. Like it's a deck building game. It's
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
action figures and stuff. So
It seems like it's the kind of thing to where there's the option to go as deep as you are interested, but
yeah.
doesn't have that necessity. So you kind of get out of it what you decide to put in. Like Bionicles in particular, like the whole thing is like you can pull them apart and reattach them in any way that you want. So it seems
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
has that ability to like go hard left turn at Albuquerque from the main storyline. Yeah, date myself with the reference there. Um Looney Tunes fans who may be watching.
Looney Tunes fans know. Real ones
Shout
Yeah,
out to
know.
the
right.
Looney
Bugs
Tunes
Bunny.
fans.
You're welcome for all of that. But yeah, like you could just kind of go as much to yes, this is what this character is supposed to look like, or I want them to look this way, or do that kind of deal.
So that's also interesting, is because also the lore of, or not the lore, the function of the toys is as Lego type toys. You
Yeah.
can take them apart and reassemble them. Can you merge? Can you Frankenstein them together?
Yeah. There's also canonical Frankensteins of them where they like, in order to fight, they like combine.
Mm.
But that's
Or
such a
unintentionally too, because the end of the
Yeah.
movie they fell into what I'm assuming the
That's
symbol was made out of the
protodermis. Yeah.
protodermis, the before
right.
skin. That's a bad phrase.
Ooh.
No, I'll see myself out. But then yeah, they became the amalgamation of good and bad, and then a door fell on him, and he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine. What's up?" And then the bad
Yeah,
guy's gone, I guess.
yeah. I thought because I also thought I was like, okay, these are sort of like Transformers, but then it took so long to get any sort of Transformer element. So I
Yeah.
also thought that was really interesting. So I just have a lot of questions, but I guess we can talk about the movie.
And I think for kids who liked lore, like a kid like me, like that there was a
That's true.
mythology, there was a lore that these characters that they were also like very fundamentally good. Like I think a lot of toys, especially to boys, it was about like you're cool. you blow things up. And the Bionicles
Yeah.
had that, but they also had like we're a community of like we work together, you know,
True.
and that like being a badass wasn't really the point, and often is like what got in their way.
Mm,
You know, it's like Tahu and Kopaka fighting, you know, like, and it's like it was ultimately kind of like a very wholesome thing, but it was like just badass enough that it wasn't like Care Bears, you know, it was like this. It has some similarities to Avatar, but
hmm
it predates Avatar.
Yeah.
And which I was like, was this an Avatar ripoff? And then I was like, no, it predates. Um, yeah, I think kids do like storylines, but I think you need the room to be able to breathe.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, sometimes I find this with like newer movies and like things where like the lore gets so complicated that it's no room to breathe. It's like the like Marvel gaslighting when you watch it and you're like, you remember
Mhm.
this, and you're like, what? No, and then you're like, oh, it's from a movie that came out like 8 years ago. Nothing could
Right.
have happened in my life in 8 years that made me forget a detail in a superhero movie.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I do know all these characters' names off the top of my head, so maybe that's not uh
Yeah,
uh
there was a target audience, a market there, and they
I
nailed
was
Cullen.
I was that market. Yeah.
Cullen alone saved Lego.
Yeah,
Yep.
me and Bionicle. And I think the fact that it was like slightly edgy to my family in particular, because it had a sort of spiritual element, I think
Yeah,
also would sort of, but it wasn't like edgy enough for it to be like morally stressful for child me.
Yeah.
Uh yeah, it was uh yeah. But but I also think that's it started to lean more into sci-fi as it went on, and I think that was part of the reason is because some parents were like, you know,
Uh-huh.
okay, that
I don't
makes
know,
sense.
that's a headcanon that like
The
there's
more that
an
we became a godless society, the more the toys became godless.
godlet. Well, I think also it's like because they didn't want
Science is our god
science is
now.
our god, or like they didn't want
Makuta won in the end.
Makuta one. They didn't want like religious parents also to feel like, oh, is this something? Am I like introducing my kids to something
Mhm.
that shouldn't? But also like because Pokemon never interested me. Like I remember we
Right.
weren't allowed to play with it, but I was also just like, okay, they're like,
That's interesting.
yeah. I
Gosh, we
think
could talk
for
about this forever.
but I think for my mom, I think that because people be, oh, it's because of evolution, and I was like, I think my mom thought anime was annoying and cheap. That was her thing. She was like, the animation's bad, the voices are high pitched. I think she had enough because she had to deal with the mice and Cinderella. She's like, if I have to deal with another high pitched squeaking thing in my life, like I think it was that, and like it was based on like buying more cars, and so my parents were just like,
Right.
we don't need it. We don't need kids asking to buy more
True.
things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a deck building toy,
Yeah.
and you gotta build your deck somehow.
So
You've
I
got
mean,
to buy them all.
buy them all, catch them
Exactly.
all. Yeah.
All the
So,
masks. I mean, Pokemon.
oh yeah. So it's like Bionicle had that too, but I think at a certain
Yeah.
point, as a
It wasn't
parent,
central
Certainly,
to the toy.
and less expansive, you know.
yeah,
There's,
Yeah.
and you have to just like pick like what bullshit am I dealing with? You know,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think like it's like okay, which things are we gonna have, and which things it's just no, we're not gonna deal with that.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean, there were some Bible videos we watched that were anime, and my mom always was kind of like, "Ugh, the voice. She like didn't like the audio mixing.
Anime Bible videos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a whole anime Bible series. It's called In the Beginning. It's like all the Old Testament and then randomly the Nativity.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah. And the audio
Next
mixing
time
was
on.
wild. So not my fantasy. Uh, so okay, we're in the movie now.
Okay.
We have a prologue.
I'm here. I'm there.
We're there.
You kind of blend right in. You're like right next to the red one.
We're in Vakama is explaining that the great spirit Mata Nui brought them to an island paradise and gave them three virtues. He illuminated their lives with unity, duty, destiny. And Makuta was jealous of the attention his brother was getting, and so he attacked him and put him into a slumber. Now they have to fight the darkness. That's kind of like I always
Yeah.
thought they were gonna give us more in that intro, and I was like, oh really? We're going with like the real basics here. So we go to Takoro, the village of fire,
Hmm.
and Jala, this guy, captain of the guard, is
So
looking.
glad you have those because
Yeah,
now
it's
Visually, it's great.
cementing.
yep.
Yeah.
The hood ornament is, Captain of the Guard.
He is looking for Takua, the chronicler.
Yep.
This
And he
guy.
says his name
Takua.
700 times.
I swear they had that on a soundboard because like
Yep.
like they nailed the exact tone and pitch of that every single time they said
Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah, he did it one time and they're like, perfect. We'll use that 300 times.
oh, another fun fact is the actor who was the initially the cast was supposed to be switched, but the actor who's supposed to play Jala was so messy, he came in and started doing Takua's lines, and they're like, "Oh, that fits Takua better." And so
So
they
you're saying
switched the
his
leads.
lack of professionalism got him the lead in this movie?
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
fantastic.
If that doesn't speak to the whole Bionicle, no, I'm kidding.
That doesn't speak to the white male experience.
Yeah.
So we learn. Okay, so he's hopping across the lava. Jala is his bestie, and he's like, "We have to go to the goalie match." And he's like, "I have to look at this warning stone because I'm the chronicler. I have to chronicle this warning stone." And he hops across lava. He's playing the floor is lava because literally lava. And he
Mhm.
pulls out the stone, and a great Kanohi mask comes out. So Kanohis are masks, and the great ones
There's like
have
an avalanche. He
powers.
trips and actually throws it into a lava river, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, sure, I'm gonna pick this up out of lava. Anyway,
Yeah, he picks it up after lava, and
he's
it's
just
like, "Ooh,
like,
it's hot."
Oh,
it's kind of
hot for choose
toasty.
like hot potato. And I was like,
He
sir.
like taps the lava. I'm like, are you okay? And it's like, oh.
And there's a lava avalanche, yes.
A
Yeah.
lava
And
lanche, if you
a
will.
lava lanche, yes. And so this is setting up our
Magma
two
wave.
leads. So Jala is the responsible one. He's captain of the guard, and Takua is irresponsible. He's the chronicler. So he's rescued by Toa Tahu, spirit of fire. So that's the red guy. And
Mhm.
he's the leader of the Toa. He's hot-headed and stubborn. He has the force field power, and his current weapon was the two swords that could be a lava surfboard.
Mhm.
And so he is like, "Okay, you're rescued," because Jala's like, this fucking dead." Like,
Yeah.
He jumps to, surf across this lava and makes it halfway just dead stops and is like, well, I guess I'm gonna die now. Which,
yeah.
yeah, he gets picks up, surfs on lava, and then they jump like 100 feet down a cliff. And then like, cool, I flew all the way down here just to climb hand over hand back up,
Yeah.
just to show off that I can. I'm just gonna carry you back up this cliff for no reason.
And
Beautiful.
there,
Cinema.
do I remember the name of the volcano?
Ooh, a
Ooh, am
real
I a
test
fake
of whether you're a
fan?
fan.
Do I remember the name of the so the mount? It's Mount Ihu, and is the ice mountain, and then it's I don't know if I know the name of the volcano, and I don't know if I'm embarrassed or proud of that. So Tahu is like, "You need to show this master to Ragavakama, but first you have to win the Koli match because
I
sports."
know the name of the volcano now.
What is it?
I'm not going to tell you. We're going to see if you
Tell
can
me.
Yeah,
remember
we
it.
know this.
So that's my quiz at the end, and your quiz is to figure out who I dressed up as for Halloween.
I mean,
No, not Tahoe.
oh,
Yeah.
ooh, this
Uh
is an interesting question then.
so they have to go play Coley. So they have this big new stadium. It's like they basically are doing the national anthem, like unity, duty, destiny.
Yep.
Mhm.
And so they're facing
I should have had
Huki.
my hand over my heart while you said it.
They're facing Huki and Hafu from Pokoro. Huki invented Koli. So he invented the game. He's like the main jock character. And he used to have a thing with Maku, or still does, who's part of the team of Gakoro. So there's Maku and Holly. And
Uh-huh.
Maku and him used to have a thing. Now, Holly was later, she wasn't part of the 2000. She came in like mid 2002, and she she was the protagonist of that online game, and in that online game it was like a plot twist that she was chosen to be on the Coley team because she wasn't that important. And so there's this other girl that was like the Trogger's right hand. So Holly's like this underdog character.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just like some lore. So that's that's
Solid.
weird.
She got the shot off on Jala, won the game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we have the Pokoro team, Gakoro, Takoro. All right. So we have at present we have Pohatsu, the Toe of Stone. He's just happy to be here. And we have Gali, the Toe of Water, who isn't because he does not like dealing with Tahu. Pohan is a goofy guy. He likes to kick and run fast. Gali is like the sensitive spiritual one and the peacemaker. And
doing a great job.
Yeah, but obviously she's causing antagonism here. But and then we have also the Trago, we have Vakama, Nakama, and Oniwa, and they're bemoaning how the Toa have forgotten that they need each other. Because Tahu and Gali are like, you'll just be steam, hot air. I'm gonna put out your fire. So they're sniping at each other, and their last plot was also about unity. So, and then Tahu and Kopaka wanted to split up, and Gali was like, we shouldn't split up, and then they did, and it went bad. So I'm like, they just learned about unity earlier in 2003. So they're at it again. They're a dysfunctional family. But what family is functional? Let's be real. So there, it's Coley time, and they say play well, which is what Lego means in Danish. So yeah,
well,
Fun fact.
like that.
And we get some iconic flirting from my OTP. So I ship Jell and Holly so hard, and we talked about this flirting in the Percy Jackson episode.
We talked about this flirting?
Yes.
And
it's some great dialogue. I mean, one for the history books. I let me tell you.
Truly. So he says nothing gets past the captain of the guard unless he wishes it. And she's like, I'll keep that in mind. And
this gives me, going back to Looney Tunes, this gives me Space Jam energy. This gives me Bugs Bunny and Lola Bunny.
Yeah.
I also watched this with my significant other. She was kind enough to share this journey with me, and that was a particular note for her of like, oh wow, this is some dialogue. This is some peak romance sparking up right here.
Peak romance. Yeah.
Lyle was disturbed because he also thought these were children, and he was like, wait, why are these children talking like that? So I guess it makes a lot more sense that they're probably more like young adults.
Right?
Yeah,
like,
he's the captain. They're like thousands of years old or something like that.
And he's the captain of a military group. I hope he's not a child.
We don't know.
Tell that to what's that book called? Ender's Game.
Ender's Game. Yeah.
Tell that to Ender's Game. Spoilers.
I don't know.
So Percy Jackson did the fight flirting thing, and I was like, I don't like it in the movie. I was like, no. But this, as a kid, I was like, ooh, yeah, this hit. And now I just like
it.
What does nothing get past the captain of the guard unless he wishes it? I'm like, that sounds oddly sexual.
Right.
So I wrote like, he's like, I don't usually do lots of tongue, but maybe I'll be into it with you. And she's like, I'll note it. That's like because I'm like, I know he's talking about sports, but the tone he's saying,
the tone is definitely like, you're trying to say something here, but I don't know if I have the mental faculty or desire to read into that as much as this could be.
Yeah, and they're trusting that their audience
as a 6-year-old
won't. But as a kid, I was like,
that was one for the parents who are being forced by their screaming child to watch this for the 30th time.
Yo, I didn't scream, okay? I wasn't allowed to scream. That was a rule. So, which honestly, kids screaming in public drives me crazy. So I'm like, you know what? I get it. So it's a tight game, which, great. That was, I shouldn't have talked about nothing gets past. I said it's a tight game. So they're neck and neck. Takua has a special move, but it just throws the ball up into the Taraga stand and knocks Vakama on the head, which I feel like Vakama kind of deserves in the greater storyline.
Who is that?
The Red Elder.
Got
It
it. Got
flies
it.
like over his head and then leaves this giant hole in the wall. Did it actually hit him?
It bounces down, hits him on the head,
Oh, and
and
then
then
drops because I was like, that how did that
Yeah.
not kill him if it glanced off his head like that?
So
Random thought about also them being short and thousands of years old. If they're that old and the captain of the guard and them are that old, as well as the elder, at some point did they decide to like, oh, I want like old man parts? Like everybody's young and like
so
childlike,
you
and I'm just
become
like,
a Taraga when you achieve your okay, this is spoilers, but you become a
oh, okay,
Taraga when
we can move on to this
you're
later if we'd like. I might be jumping the
okay.
gun. If you would like, I
Yes,
don't want to ruin
but
the structure.
there is lore as to how you become a Taraga.
Okay.
So Gaakora wins, Holly wins, because maybe he wished that she could get it past him. I don't know, but Holly's like,
He couldn't stop it, or maybe the
she
captain of the guard wished it.
he wished it. So, but she was like, she's a good sport. She's like, great moves out there. Everybody like Takua, you could really work on that move. It could be really something special. And then Jala
Foreshadowing.
is like not bad for a Gamatoran, which is saying not bad for a girl. And I'm like, she should murder him right there
Yeah.
because she just won the island championship. And
Lyle was
she's
like racist or sexist. I don't know which, maybe both.
and it's like supposed to be flirty, but it's also like she just won the island championship. She's not bad for a Gamatoran. She's good for everyone on the
Entire
island.
island. Your entire society.
Yeah, that's like saying like not bad to a girl for a girl to like Venus and Serena Williams, which I guess people do anyway. So
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But there's that meme where it was like 50% of men think they could beat Venus or Serena Williams in tennis, and it's like I approach the bat. I think she'd be better if she smiled more. She hits the ball, it goes right through my skull and murders me. So the mask falls out as they're doing it, slips out, and Takua is like, oh, and makes the light shine on Jala because he's irresponsible. He doesn't want responsibility. And so everyone's like, oh, a mask. And so Nokama, who has a mask that gives her translation powers, that's not explained in the movie, but that's just a thing that like, real fans would know. So
Gotcha.
she
That makes more sense.
Thank God I'm not one of those. Real fan.
Because they had a whole language. They had like an alphabet that you could like decode.
I'm curious, is it written like correctly in the face of the mask, or is it written in like reverse on the mask? Or
it's written reverse, so
you have that just emblazoned on your forehead. If you wear it too long, you take it off, and you just got like
mask face.
Yeah. So she translates it, and Wakama's like, "Oh, it's a prophecy foretold, a seventh Toa."
Oh, didn't the guy who saved them in the volcano literally tell them, "Hey, you need to go take this to the elder"? And then they're like, "JK, we're gonna play, and then we're gonna hide it from people." Oh no, we're gonna.
Yeah.
He said to take it to them, but he said after the match. He's like, this is really important. It's for the 7th or whatever. You need to take this elder, but it can wait after the match.
It's the island championship.
You gotta play lacrosse first.
So allegedly this script only had 8 drafts.
Allegedly?
Yes, according to my research. Only 8 drafts.
But it had 4 writers, something like that, right?
So
they had 13 months.
Vakama will constantly throughout this movie be like, as the prophecy foretold, and I'll be like, we haven't heard this prophecy, and this also wasn't like a prophecy that like, oh, Bionicle fans like would know about this prophecy, because like the prophecy came to be in this movie, right? So
they found it on the back of the mask and was like, oh, cool.
So it'll be like, out of the shadows they come, as the prophecy foretold. And it'll be like, what prophecy for Kama? Like he just constantly says, as foretold, and I'm like, by who? You right now? Are you? I feel like that hit as an elder. He just makes things up. He's like, as the prophecy foretold, and you're like,
that's the job of an elder.
Yeah. I'm like, you just make that up. I'm like, it's like, imagine it's like referencing, like expecting listeners to have like, or watchers to have like read the entire like book of Isaiah and know like every prophecy. It's like, whose prophecies? Okay, so
time for my afternoon tea, as foretold.
As foretold. Destiny, it's a virtue. So they're like, okay, so the mask needs a herald. And Tahu is like, oh, let's shine me on Jala because Tahu wants someone from his village, and Jala is like the best boy. He's captain of the guard. He's the Trargar's right hand. He has the same mask that Tahu used to have, right? Um, and so they're like, okay, it's Jala, and so Takua is like sneaking out, but Jala knows the light, like Takua found it, and so he's like, oh, Takua's gonna go with me because he's like, Takua, be honest, and Takua's just like, oh, hail Jala. I'm like, Takua is a shitty friend.
Ain't great.
Yeah.
The whole concept of the mask, like, is originally it only shined really bright while Takua was holding it, right?
Yeah,
And then it fell out of the bag and it fell into his foot and they were kicking it back and forth and it was like light on, light off, light on, light off. Everything
yeah,
he was kicking it, and then it fell into Kua's foot and it lit up and then he pointed it towards Jala. They're like,
yeah.
ah. So it came to the ceremony and they're like, Jala was lit up in magnificent light, you know, he must be the one, and then the whole back and forth. But then after that point in the movie, it doesn't matter who touches the mask, it's glowing.
Yeah.
Well, after that, the mask just glows straight forward. They're just
Yeah,
Because
it's like lighting a flashlight and be like, it'll lead us there. And
Yeah.
you're just walking and following
yeah,
the
like
flashlight.
follow the light of the mask, but it only goes forward. You would expect like maybe it like tilts a little bit, but it's just like
right.
sure.
That's what I thought. I was like, okay, it's leading, it's like a compass. And I guess that's like the idea, right? But the light is not compassing.
No, and
No.
I think that's like a misnomer. They think it's compassing, but it's just trying to, it goes to Takua
It's the
has
mask
found
of
it.
light. It
Yeah.
Yeah,
can't
but then
do
again, yeah,
anything
it's not
else.
supposed to take them anywhere. It's already with the person it's supposed to go to.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
mask is like, it's like lighting up. It's like, ooh, you can put me on. And they're like, no, we have to go this way. He's like, ah, fuck. This mask is like, God damn it, just put me on.
It's broken. What's going on?
So
Double batteries.
they they leave on Puku, the crab, and Jala challenges Hallie to a rematch. She's like, I
Speaking
don't
of
have
crab, we're going out for seafood tonight, and I'm gonna be cracking open that crab's legs and be thinking about that Bionicle crab dog.
Bestest boy.
So they're Jala's like, oh, I challenge you to a rematch. And because she's like, I don't have time for big goodbyes. And she says the iconic line, better hurry back because I'll be practicing. She like does a little sashay away. This is god tier flirting. And when I texted my sibling that I was watching this movie, I texted one of the iconic lines, and we both texted each other at the same time, I'll be practicing. Because like there are like 3 or 4 lines from this movie that are like seared into our brain because I watched this, and so I think of I'll be practicing all the time. Like whenever someone's being flirty, I think I'll be practicing.
I always love a little bit more insight into the inner monologue of Cullen Callaghan.
Absolutely. So the first thing I'll say about the genderedness of these Bionicles is really like this Bionicle, this girl Bionicle, for lack of a better phrase.
Use her Christian name.
I can't remember her name. I can't remember anyone's name.
Not hard.
It is very difficult. So she doesn't have like the only like genderedness of her is really just kind of like the way she moves is kind of like meant to be a little bit more feminine.
And
but
she has like
otherwise,
a swooshy breastplate, but it's not like, it's just water themed. It's not like boob themed.
Boob themed.
Yeah. But I mean,
She's the only person in this movie with an 8-pack, though.
Yes, I actually think it's a 10-pack.
It actually might be. I think you're right.
It's insane. It's so crazy. But I was like, it could be worse. Like her chest plate isn't protruding. Her ass plate isn't protruding. Like she looks very similar to them. She's just maybe a little more slender, and it's mostly just the way she moves. And then we'll talk about like the larger blue one.
Golly.
Okay, golly. I know it's a something.
Right start.
Thank you. I'll just call her but like we'll talk about her a little bit.
Hey girl. Yeah, that's their version of hey girl in this universe. Like you're in the Waterville, it's like, hey girl.
But we'll talk about her, but like there's also just very little like genderedness about her look. And so I actually really appreciated that. Because like otherwise they look kind of mono, I
Yeah.
guess. Like there's not a lot of differences, and there you go.
Absolutely.
Genderless society pretty much.
Yeah,
There's really
because
no way to tell one from the other than like voices, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
because that's like the Lola Bunny comparison is interesting because up until like the Kristen Wiig version of the character, like honestly, the main thing about Lola was that she was like hypersexualized. It's like the
Kristen
same.
Wiig?
Kristen Wiig played her in the TV show. And she in that one, she's like a crazy girlfriend, but in a very funny, she's just like super weird and unhinged.
Well, I was thinking of the newest Space Jam movie.
Yes. I haven't seen that one,
Okay,
which is
but you've seen
I'm
what she
friend
looks like?
no,
Okay, because she is also like
hyper
she's
sexy.
no.
Oh, okay.
No, that's why people were mad. And Lyle and I
Oh,
were jokingly mad when we watched it. We're like,
where's the bunny boobs?
where's her butt? Why doesn't
Yeah.
she have a bigger butt? Where are her curves? Not my
Yeah.
Lola Bunny. She was fine, but she was just like androgynous, I guess,
Yeah.
like in a way that like it makes
That
sense.
bunnies
She's a
are.
fucking cartoon bunny. Like she has a similar body to Bugs. Like that makes
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, that's like that like I do appreciate how even though she's like primarily a love interest and she is like primarily just kind of flirting, she's not like sex. It's like I do think it's
We
insane how
if you
Lola
do get
Bunny is like,
oh
and we
yeah.
made put that in a movie for kids.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they do a lot of that.
Yeah.
They
But
do a lot
anyway,
of Looney Tunes is a sorry.
now we need to talk about Looney Tunes. We will have to talk about the Space Jam movies eventually. But I think what's interesting about Bionicle is that like kids will always develop, crushes on different animated characters, humanoid
Yeah.
or not, right?
Mhm.
I'm talking about Kovu. But but like in this world, like you would more so be interested in their personality because of a lack of genderedness in
Yeah.
their bodies. So I think that's also interesting is that like if you're like, "Ooh, I like Holly."
Holly. Yeah.
Aha. Uh if you like her, like if you're a kid and you're like, "Oh my God, I have a crush." It's like more about her personality, like her voice, like
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting.
My OTP, Jala and Holly. I shipped them so hard as a kid. I was like, wow.
I think you
Um
also ship them really hard as an adult
as an adult.
right
Yeah,
now.
honestly, still. Yeah, why not?
No
I caught her
shame.
flirting.
We're
Yeah.
no shame on that
No
too.
shame. Yeah.
I
Uh
why not? Why not ship it? Is that going to be our question at the end? Do we
yeah.
ship Chuck? I knew it.
So they're leaving and then Taku or Vakama is like, stay in the light, safely in the light. Because but like Taku is goofing off and being like blah 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 blah. And they're like shoving each other. Uh and he's like, enough of your tomfoolery. He's so Elrond coded. Uh meanwhile, Gali has gone off to ponder the deep thoughts. So
Mm,
she's at a location called Kini Nui, which is the Great Temple. Because
mm,
each society also has their individual elemental temple, and this is like the big one.
mhm.
Uh, so she is pondering, she's meditating, she's in her like yoga era.
Yeah.
She's floating, she's about to achieve enlightenment. She sees a seventh star, classic
Uh-oh.
prophecy move, a new star.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So Christmas coded. And she's like, oh my gosh. But then meanwhile, Makuta, the Lord of Shadow, he rips out from his body because he's like, they found the Tower of Light. I need to stop them. He rips out from his body these worms. They're called Krata, different from Krana, collectible multicolored worms that you can also buy in packs. Um, and he pulls them out to make his sons, the sons of the Makuta, the Rakshi. And so he's like, I will have poisoned their unity and shatter their destiny. And so it's the green, blue, and brown one, because these
Uh,
were toys.
Mhm.
And they had the powers of poison, disintegration, and shatter. Disintegration and shatter also always bothered me as a kid because I'm like, that's way too similar. Uh, so they head out, they're in their ring wraith, they're in their ring wraith bag, like
yeah.
we're screaming, we're hunting. And Golly's like, they're going for the Shire. I mean Takoro.
Because they apparently just sit down in midair and can fly. I've never seen an
Yeah.
interpretation of flight being like just kicking it back and just zooming away. Like they're on Star Wars speeders, but it's just their own butts.
But you
It's
could
Yeah.
combine their feet like that in the toy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Rakshi had like a no, it was the Paraka later on who kidnapped all American rejects.
There was some commercial or something like
Yeah. Yeah, because I sent you that clip, Hannah, of
Wait,
the
they were in.
they weren't in the lore, but it was like a promotional thing where it's like save the band.
I was kidding about that, like All American Rejects, big Bionicle fans in our text. I had not that context,
Yeah.
and so now I'm like, wow, I prophesied that.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
there's like a Move Along. The song Move
Yeah,
Along
Move
was like the
Along.
backing of some
course.
promo material for Bionicle.
Yeah,
And they were kidnapped,
by the Paraka.
and through the power of your imagination, you could save them by buying the
Yeah.
toys. Available now at Walmart,
Yeah,
Target,
there's like a
Toys R Us.
sweepstakes thing. Also, Bionicle has a ride at Legoland. I should clarify, I forgot to mention that. But it's basically like the magic teacups at Disneyland.
Checks out.
So Golly warns them. The guard is like, the Toa of water approaches. I think of this line all the time. The Toa of water is here. Sound the alarm. And so because she's running, she leaps up because they have this whole thing where the stones slowly go up, lava bridge, and slowly go down. And in Mata Nui Online Game 2, that was a very slow sequence. You're like, I'm just trying to get into this village.
Yep, we're gonna lower them, be safe, really slow sequence, but fails to mention that the three guys coming after them can fly, and just like
Yeah, and they're all standing there
immediately
like
lifts them back up as they're trying to run us.
because they're like waiting, and then Tahu's like, no one has broken the wall, says Takoro, none shall this day. It's giving very like Theoden,
Yes.
and he immediately gets blasted through the walls.
Yep. Within like 8 seconds, just straight through
Yep.
it. Just like, oh well, this is awkward.
So
I don't think the engineers here in Bionicle Land are very good. They're not
just
good with their
so-
bridge physics. They're way too safe, I think, and then the walls haven't been readhered in years, millennia
Paper
maybe.
mache.
Paper mache, basically.
I mean, they're plastic people, so yeah. So the Rakshi come in. They're Gali and Tahu are fighting them, and Vakam was like, as prophesied. And Tahu gets scratched by the poison one as they're fighting.
Yeah, on the
And then
face.
they're like doing their ring race thing. They're searching the houses and returning like, and Gali's like, Holly, open the gates, get everyone to safety. So they escape.
We'll talk about some of the combat here while
get into the combat.
Oh boy. This gentleman has swords, and not once does he ever hit anybody with them.
Right? I was like, what is the point of these? This whole sequence is like completely leaving my brain. The only thing I remember is that there was stuff happening, and then all of a sudden they're like looking back at their village and everything's destroyed, and they're like, wow, this sucks. And that's all I remember.
It's all
So
that
this is like-
happened. Like there's like a jump, there's a swing. There's like, I'm gonna stab the ground and throw lava at you, which not
Yeah.
even like there's just like fire on the ground, which they didn't then do later. Or it might have been in this fight, be like surrounded with 2 lines of fire, and the thing stands
Yes.
there for like 15 seconds, like, I don't know what to do. And then like it just doesn't show that one again. Like, did he kill it? What's going on? I
Yeah,
don't know
what
what's happening
happened to
here.
him?
It really could have just taken one step to the left and been fine. Use your sword, stab something.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting is that like I don't think there is any sort of like stabbing or slashing from like
No.
the good guys,
Or-
because the only like slash is from the bad guy on that guy's face, on the red
Mhm.
one's face, where he gets poisoned. And so that's interesting. It's like going back to what Cullen said about like it's doesn't have like overt violence because it's still trying to be kid friendly, but there's still, like combat, but the combat is very
like this. I'm doing a thing and we're standing still for a minute, and then we're gonna cut. And that
It's
guy's
I'm gonna
either
use
be
a
standing there or
power.
not.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna use a power to hit you, but it's not gonna like kill you. It's gonna push you away.
Yeah.
It's like very
Turn-based.
Yeah, very
Yeah, it's
turn-based as well.
turn-based for sure. And then also it's just like it's not hurting, except the bad guys get hurt, the good guys get
The
hurt, but
good
the
guys
bad
get hurt, yeah.
guys, you don't see them die or get destroyed or anything.
Yeah.
There was like
Because
any
I think it's sanitized in a way.
to some degree, yeah, for sure. I mean, in that first fight, they were getting just like rolled around. Like the bad guys,
Yeah.
they would try and do something and nothing would happen to the bad guys, and then up there goes the fire Toa straight through a wall again. Force
Yeah.
field is useless. And then I didn't even see him get scratched, but every like conflict, even with like the what are the bad guys' name?
The
The
Rakshi.
Rakshi. They never use the ends of their spears unless they're like
No.
gonna
Yeah.
shoot a laser at you. They're just like, I'm gonna come at your face with the middle
Yep.
bit. And like stab
Yeah.
somebody. You got a sword, you got something, just like But that laser was the purple laser disintegration then? If
I
like
think so, yeah.
you go
Okay.
disintegration, poison, and then shatter.
Shatter, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
that disintegration laser just that thing messed things up, I guess.
Yeah.
it's also interesting that until I think the Paraka, yeah, who we talked about, who kidnap the All-American Rejects, the villains, other than like the big bads have personalities, but the villain things that they fight aren't like humanoid the same way. They don't have like they're not
Yeah.
fighting a different culture, even compared to like say like the orcs in Lord of the Rings, who
Yeah.
like have some like sort of agency. It's like the Rakshi are kind of mindless hunters. The Borak were literally a hive mind. Rahi were corrupted animals.
Right.
And
They're not
then
like sentient beings
yeah,
that they're fighting.
later they're fighting like spiders and cops. And yes, there's a season where the bad guys are the cops. And then the Paraka are the first time it's like, oh, evil people who are like posing as Toa but aren't.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. The combat's very, very interesting. I obviously found it dissatisfying because again, I'm like, I'm trying to figure out, are they being successful or are they getting their asses kicked? And I
But I
leave that
mean,
up to like the animation, obviously not having the time and budget to do what they needed to do fully, but also like it needing to be sanitized because that's a kid's
yeah,
1 hour and 15-minute film.
yeah.
And
I
then
love that
hard
length.
cuts. And yeah, the
Oh,
length
the
was phenomenal.
hardest hard
But
cut.
it hard cuts, and they're just like looking at a stone city sinking into lava. Did these
Yeah.
three guys just cut
Yeah.
the entire base out of the city? Like, well, they destroyed
Right.
some houses, but what happened? This whole thing is listing like the
They
Titanic
must
is
have
sinking.
shattered or
I was like,
disintegrated the
Yep.
base.
Yep. Foundation. That where are those engineers? Civil
Right.
engineers.
Well,
The
they're
foundation
lava
of our
farmers,
society.
not engineers.
what do you farm lava for?
You like I think it's because like when lava hardens, it's like really good soil.
When lava hardens, it's like
It's
rock.
rock.
No, but
So
isn't there
Glass.
like a thing where like volcanic soil is really fertile?
it's ash. It's the ash.
Yeah,
from
so
the
they're doing
volcano.
that, I think, but it's called
Okay,
lava farming. Yeah.
that makes sense. Okay.
So they yeah, they're fleeing, their village is destroyed.
And
Uh
golly, guh,
yeah.
she like looks at the guy's poison slash and he's like so angry and mean to her, but she like very gently, she's the mom of this friend
Yeah.
group.
She is, yeah.
She really is. Like she's keeping shit together and she's also like being the caring one. And he's very angry about
Yeah.
her touching him and also being like caring for him, just like, oh my
Mhm.
God, like you got slashed. And he's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the green already was like
But then
infecting his like
again,
left eye and like
yeah, but then
He's
again, his
fire.
entire village did
Did
just
die.
die, you know, like, or the buildings
Yeah.
itself came down. The people seemed to be, you know,
Fine.
and it
Yeah.
seemed to be like
physically fine.
corrupting who he was, like
Yes.
Yeah.
character. Like it wasn't just like, oh, I'm poisoned, like sick poison, but like evil poison.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Gale's interesting because it's like you'd think I like, okay, 5 boys, 1 girl, that's kind of that ratio is a little off. But like for a kid's like toy, especially in the 2000s, the fact that it was primarily like a boy toy, but there was a girl character and she was like one of, it was kind of not like, oh, progressive, but it is interesting in like the role she plays because she's not a love interest to any of the other Toa.
Right.
You know,
But she's not combat active as much as they
Yeah.
are. She's very much the organizer,
Yeah.
the healer, that kind of role. The
Yeah.
peacemaker,
He
which
accidentally
is
hit you with a wave of water.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like she serves a very
Traditionally feminine
role.
role.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which kind of comes into stuff the creators said about like gender being a state of mind in their society. Like that water is like more feminine. So it's like I'm like I would say so much to unpack, but in a way it's almost like it isn't. It's just like that's just what they did,
Lady liquid. I'm
Lady
drinking some lady liquid.
Water is girly, so whenever you drink it, think of that. I mean, I did witness a couple at Disneyland, like a gay couple, like the way they were like sipping from each other's camelback was like oddly sexual in line for Peter Pan. I was like,
There's a lot of eye contact going on here.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, what? There's children. So yeah, it's too late, Takoro falls. Meanwhile, Takua and Jala, they are traveling in the jungle, and Takua's complaining about bugs, and Jala is like, you travel everywhere, but you never feel like you belong when you like learn to accept your destiny. And he's like, I don't really know where I fit in. Because he's different. He's red, but he has a blue mask. And they're attacked by an ash bear, but they're saved by Liwa, Toa of Air, after Jala tries to jump on the bear.
The other one, Jala, he is red with a yellow mask, or he's like red and yellow.
Yeah.
So how come is that like his normal is that like a normal color schema in his village?
Yes.
Or is he also okay?
So there are other yellow masked people in the fire village. So
But
Jala initially was a Happy Meal toy. Early on in 2001.
I mean, that makes sense.
It's like you got like warm color schemes and like cold color schemes. So
right.
Colors.
So you have McDonald's and Pepsi.
So yeah,
Pepsi, man.
all the Matoran aren't exactly the same color in their village.
Right.
So there'll be some variants of light blue, dark blue, you know, or like different, like red, orange, yellow.
But Takua is the only one who's sort of like a mix of like blue, which presumably comes from Blue Village. Red comes from Red Village.
And so these are their second forms, which there's like a canon thing that they like updated their bodies. But people are just like, that's kind of like was one of those canon things that you're like, why do we do that? Because it's not reflected in the movies. But initially there were these like bendy McDonald's toys, even smaller guys, and he had a blue mask, a red body, and yellow feet.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Let's not get out of hand here.
Yeah.
Too many colors in one Bionicle.
Two genders in one body. That's enough. But three, oh my goodness.
This is a primary character here.
Yeah, very literally.
So they're in the jungle and they're saved. So like Jala's trying to climb this bear, and Liwa is like, oh, she's just trying. I'm not gonna do his tree speak because I can't remember it. Yeah. He's like, she's just trying to defend.
Just give me your best Yoda voice.
Which is funny because in this movie he's very spiritual, but Liwa was typically like the goofy one. But he
sort of gives me Rafiki energy, where he's spiritual and goofy.
Yeah. And so he's like, she's just trying to defend her home because Jala's like, I gotta kill this bear, and he's like, whoa.
He pulls a knife and he's like, slow down, man.
Yeah. I literally went, is he about to stab that bear?
There's like the wave of animal cruelty
in a second here
that we experience in this jungle sequence. So Lee was like, oh, let me help you on your quest. We're gonna fly. And so he summons a gecko bird because Takua came with Pookie, which was hard to build and messy and didn't look cute. And Jala came with the gecko bird, which was also hard to build and messy and didn't look cute. And I was like, I just want the characters. I want this big ass ugly bird. But the bird flies down, and they're like, okay, we're gonna fly the gecko bird because that's like the culture of the jungle people is they fly these birds. So they fly the bird up. Just I guess so Liwa can fly, even though his mask is levitation or whatever. But they fly, and he's levitating and then gliding. He's Dua Lipa. He's levitating.
I was gonna say Dua Lipa featuring DaBaby.
And so he fly, and then they just crash the bird.
Yeah.
In the mountain.
Can I?
And they also leave the crash.
Exactly. The
Yes.
greatest betrayal in this whole movie.
I agree.
Not 10 minutes before, he's like, they're leaving with the crab from the city. Like, yeah, I could never leave my crab friend. I couldn't go anywhere with us. My best friend.
10
Like,
minutes
absolutely.
later.
Like, we can fly now. Deuces, go home.
And the
Yeah.
crab is literally like, oh, it's like
So
being abandoned.
sad.
And their home is destroyed. So it's like going, it's like,
Go home to what, bitch?
Not that they knew at this point.
They
but,
knew
Yeah,
it.
like,
he didn't. So, yeah, that poor crab.
yeah.
for real. Just like, yeah, just you, I could never go anywhere without you. As soon as he gets the ability to fly, just like,
He's like,
no
"Peace."
second thought.
Yeah.
No
And then
room, sorry.
Yeah.
yeah, no room, Puku. It's like, well, think about that. Have Liwa carry her. I don't know, but like, then they just crash the bird into the mountain and leave it.
Yep.
So I'm like, what? That just sequence is like, okay, they wanted a flying sequence, so they did it. But I'm like,
They wanted to sell the bird.
yeah, they want to sell the
Yeah.
bird, but at what cost? And like
Friendship
the
and the
cost
life of the bird.
$35.99. The cost they wanted to sell that bird. So they crash into the snow area, and then Lee was like, "Oh, the drums of Takoro tell a sorry bad story." Or Lee Koro. They say that Takoro fell to the sons of Makuta, and they're like, "Our village, our home." And Jala's like, "I'm captain of the guard. If I had been there, if I hadn't been on this quest that my best friend dumped on me because he doesn't want to follow his destiny." And so Lee was like, "I gotta go be with the Toa." It's like he's saying how you say Toa, and it's like, you know what a Toa is, you are one. Giving Saison Marguerite. But
I also would like to point out that it was much past this point until I realized what Toa was. I spent so much time trying to put the context clues together and I couldn't. And then finally I just turned to Lyle and was like, what the fuck is a Toa? He's like, it's the tall people. I was like, got it.
yeah, they're the
It took
warriors.
so long and I don't know why.
So they're like the main toys.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so he flies off to with the Toa. And so yeah, I also in my notices they leave Puku, all caps, 3 exclamation points. So they're wandering in the
Most
ice.
important plot point in this whole movie.
Yeah.
The largest betrayal.
Truly. They wander in the ice and they can't see in the ice, and they see Bow Rock, which are those swarm mind people from earlier.
Right.
And then they see Kopaka Toa of Ice. He's the stoic one. And he rivals, like he is like the second leader, and he doesn't get along with Tahu.
You're as cold
Ice
as
and fire.
Yeah, Ice and Fire.
Somebody should write like a song about that.
Because apparently I learned that when researching for this, that initially there were just like the 4 classic elements, and then Lego wanted 6, so they added ice and stone.
I would think stone would be the stoic one, but
He's
like, what do
Stone
I
and
know about
Earth
stone?
also have the same personality in this movie.
Yeah.
And they're like the least represented of the Toa, so it's also like we did not know what to do with all these characters.
Why did you need 6?
Yep.
For the product lines, yeah. So they also, I just want to point out I'm wearing a tropical shirt because we're on a tropical island.
I'm wearing a tank top for the same reason.
You know what?
Totally planned it.
That was the reference I needed 2 hours into this.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah. They're so Kopaka's like we're on a quest, and Kopaka's like, I don't care. And they see Rakshi attacked Kokoro, and then the Rakshi attack them, and they're like, Takua is on the water like paddling with the mask that they're after, and Kopaka freezes it.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh, that's so scary. Like, and he's like, oh, good fighting, little one. Like, and then they're like, oh yeah. And then they look, and Kopaka's already gone. Like, he's like,
yeah.
bye.
Yeah, he's like, I'm out of here.
I don't know if at that point, main character, dang it, Takua had realized that they were after him and not the mask. Like,
no.
he audibly says that later in the movie, but at that point, Jala falls and drops the mask, and Takua's like, the mask, grabs the shield, jumps on the water, and just bails on Jala, and is like, just getting out of here. And the bad guys go over him, luckily. But at that point, I don't think Takua knew that they were coming after Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it
Do
makes sense
those
that we know the mask,
creatures
but like, I
do
don't know.
those
It was just
creatures
like
come
straight up
back?
like, I'm out.
Those Rakshi,
Yeah.
they do, yeah.
Okay, because I was gonna say it ended on like the hand,
Being
Yeah,
and then it goes
the
to the next.
Terminator.
which
And I
was a
was
cool little sequence.
I was waiting for the finger to twitch or
Yeah.
whatever, but then I was like, okay, are they coming back? And I went through the rest of the film. I was like, did they come back? Because I could not recognize
The
one
Rakshi,
Bionicle villain from another.
the Rakshi were pretty hard to distinguish. Like their colors were so muted compared
Yeah.
to like the Toa. And I do think Takua kind of sucks. I don't know. It's like because he was never my favorite as a kid. And it's like I
Mm.
think because it's like he ditches his crab, he ditches his friend who he forced to
He's
be
a
on this
ditcher.
quest.
He
He's a
ditches people.
ditcher.
His
Yeah.
own responsibility, like
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Not cool.
yeah, he doesn't seem like his heart's particularly filled with light. So they're off into the tunnels from Mount Aihu to the tunnels of Onukoro, which is the Onukoro Highway.
I'm curious as to how much time passes through this, because I mean, that's a good question about the ice Rakshi, the one that got frozen. One, the our ice fellow here is the only one who's an effective fighter on his own. Like he's just like
Yeah.
freezing these things and having a grand old time, and it's like it's casual. I'm out of here. But they get frozen, but they're apparently making it all over the place before Takua can fly anywhere. They're like hitting all the villages, and like I assumed also that it was a different group of
Mm.
enemies that had just been spawned because they're just like everywhere at every city all the time.
Yeah.
But this is when we do get, well, first, okay, we're gonna get the new respawn of Rakshi, but first we get Tahu is sad for Takoro. He says, buried in the village, or buried in the lava that sustained it. And Gali's like, brother, your mask. And this is an iconic line. It's in all caps because we say this in my family whenever someone gets scratched. You worry about scratches. My village is gone. So we say, you worry about scratches is a line we say. And Lee was just kind of like, wow, okay, because he's there now. He's like, and then, but Tahu's getting all green poisoned, which usually
Yeah.
Liwa got poisoned. He got poisoned by the evil bees and the Borak.
Oh, yes.
So
Evil bees. You really got to
evil
watch out
bees.
for those.
Gotta watch
One's
out
in
for
the
those.
one's in the corner of your background.
Oh, I was wondering what those were.
Yeah,
Bees?
yeah, evil bee.
That's an evil
I
bee.
don't
Because they have
remember
like
the name.
frog feet, you know?
Yeah,
What's-
they fly.
What's
That's Gali.
this one?
Oh,
What's this
that's a
Scorpion.
Nui Jaga, I believe. It's a scorpion.
Also notice that
Uh-huh.
like the animals make more like robotic noises than like the people who they all seem to be made out of the same thing. But like that bear made very distinctly like hydraulics and piston noises
Yes.
outside of anything else. I mean, it is a giant mass of metal, presumably, but I don't know, random observation.
I have to admit this. I am thinking about how they do reproduce, and also the fact that there's like a village of female, quote unquote, female Bionicles. Are they crossbreeding? Are they breeding at all?
Do they have
Is
a
it
mating
asexual?
season?
I'm now obsessed
So
with knowing about the
Do they
reproductive.
devour the children of our world to gain biological
Bionicle
material
children.
to then
Yes.
form and forge new Bionicle?
So
Yeah.
what you were talking about with the village of I came up in my little fanficky child brain that like the boys there'd be like in the spring like boys would go to the female village and like try and like be cool and they would like
Uh-huh.
pick boyfriend. Now I didn't have like the concept of sexual reproduction,
Right.
but it's like that was like they would like pick a partner.
But you knew
Like
they would pair off. That's
yeah,
sort
like
of
almost like a reindeer games type
They would
thing.
hold hands and a new Bionicle would show up.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, this
The
was I
Bionicle
think
stork, the Bionicle bird would fly by and
yeah.
drop a new Bionicle
Because
Mhm.
this
at the
was
doorstep.
before I was familiar with the concept of out of marriage children. So that would be in my Greek mythology era. And that I thought it was time spent together meant if you spent a long time with someone, you'd eventually have a baby. Like I thought like the act of just sleeping next to someone all the time meant,
I gotcha.
yeah.
You see, when a mommy and a daddy love each other very much,
Yeah. But I was like, so how is Zeus having all these babies? Yeah, because I'm like, he only saw her for like 10 seconds and they already have a baby.
he
It's
doesn't
like,
spend
well,
any time with his family.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in a much more child-friendly mythology, They're in the tunnels, and Takua is like, haha, look at these bunny ears. And I'm like, your village, your whole
People
society
are
just
dying.
died.
Takua, people are
People are
dying.
dying.
That scene is, for whatever reason, one specific scene that I remember from watching this as a kid. There was the scratch, and then there's just him being a bunny. And I don't know why those are the two things that stuck out in memory from 20 years ago. But I was like, oh, I remember that.
I've seen this. Play Olivia Rodrigo's Deja Vu. And so Makuta is like, I'm in the shadow, and wherever shadow is, I am. So I was on a ride at Disneyland yesterday, and like we went in the darkness, and I was like, oh my gosh, Makuta. Uh, and so Makuta is like, if you succeed, Jala's gonna die, your bestie that you've kind of ruined his own life. But not saying that he's gonna die. So just give it to me. I'll spare you in your villages. Otherwise, I'm gonna wreck you. I'm gonna wreck everything. Classic Temptation of Christ situation. Also, shadow is everywhere. I guess the devil didn't threaten to kill John or Mary Magdalene or something, but it's a classic heroes scene. And Takua's just like, no, no, I won't work with you. But then, and Makuta points this out later, Takua doesn't tell Jala or anything. He's just like, I have to leave. I can't be on this quest anymore. And Jala's like, well, I'll finish your quest. Because if they have their two fatal flaws, it's Shakespearean, remember?
Yep.
Doubly Shakespearean.
Yeah, doubly Shakespearean. I feel like Nicki Minaj, and she's a mammoth. But like Takua is so irresponsible, and Jala is too responsible that he takes on other people's duties. So he's gonna finish what Takua's destiny for him, and Takua runs off, and he goes all sad to Onukoro, where we see Onawa Toa of Earth is here, and Powhatan's like, the Mask of Light prophecy, it's happening. Onawa's personality, I think it like he used to be like a loner and kind of a weirdo, and then he was just kind of the same as Powhatan. But if you can tell, like the ones that they focus on are the ones with the clearest personalities, like Tahu, Gali, Kopaka, and Liwa kind of have like the more solid ones, and then the Earth and Stone guys are like, we're just here. So Makuta's angry that his offers of alliance have been rejected, so he creates 3 new Rakshi. The red one, I don't remember the Rakshi names, and I'm proud of myself for that. There's a red one that's fear. The black one is like hunger, but it like absorbs your powers. And the white one is anger. There's also, which this makes sense for destroying virtues more than like the physical ones, but there's also apparently 42 different breeds of Rakshi, which is later in the canon.
Dang.
Because later Rakshi are like retcon and they're not sons of Makuta, they're like a species. But so they attack Onukoro, but they're clearly after Takua because the mask isn't there. And Takua connects it because he's like climbing up the wall and they're really grabbing after him. So Onawa makes his own village collapse. He like they're like, oh, Onukoro fell. I'm like, because Onawa just like he like collapses the ceiling, and Powhatan, who does no elemental, like barely any elemental powers this whole movie, is like, how did you stop the ceiling from falling on us? And then it falls on them. Which as a kid, I was like, that's hilarious. But now I'm like, you destroyed your own village.
You're talking about their underrepresentation as well. And they show him immediately, and they're like, on the platform, and then the Rakshi show up, and they're like, oh, I got this, and immediately dies. At least I thought he died. Like he jumps forward, and then all of his power is sucked straight out of him. He goes completely gray, and I was like, oh, he got like 15 seconds of screen time, and they just straight up murdered that man. He's just dead.
He's just dead.
And then next thing you see, he's pulling the ceiling down, and I was like, I don't know what happened. What's the point of this absorbed powers guy? Then I don't know what's happening. But
yeah, sometimes because everyone had to have a cool power, it meant the cool powers weren't super utilized. It's because there's only so much time. So then Tahu, Gali, and Liwa show up. And Tahu gets shot by the anger one, and he's already poisoned, so it just sets him off. And he's attacking Gali because fire has no brothers.
That makes more sense. I didn't realize that was anger originally, and so I thought it was just more like poison influence. But okay, He's just getting hit with all the bad emotions.
Yeah.
And he's already a hothead.
He's failing every wisdom saving throw.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
and he is going crazy. And then Tokopaka just freezes him. He's just like, enough of this. He plays the role Elsa would play in a Disney princess team up, where I have significantly more powers than the rest of you.
Yep.
And
For an add-in, he is very strong.
yeah. And so they freeze him, and then, but yeah, Onukoro fell. Takua escapes while being chased, and he finds Jala because he found Puku out in the snow mountains. He's back on Puku, right?
Poku
Yeah.
came back for him and was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, he decided to keep going, even though I abandoned you. Oh, nice.
Yeah, you don't deserve him, Puku,
Unhealthy
or her.
detachment."
Sorry to
Yeah.
misgender the Bionicle crap. She's already going through enough. And so then he finds Jala, who's like dangling off a cliff. And he's like, Mata Nui, help me. And he's like about to die. And he's like, oh, just my luck. And then Takua saves him. And it's like, okay, friend moment. And he's like, they're after me, not the mask. So it's like he's admitting that he's the herald. They're trying to heal Tahu. And so Leo and Kapaka try Icy Hot. They try their Kopaka's sword.
Yeah.
He's like icy hot. And
They're like,
yeah,
we're gonna need all of our power to do this. And then Icy Hot happens, and she's just standing there like does nothing to help at first.
He's having his exorcism moment. He's like,
yeah.
And so she's like, okay, let me try my water powers. And I'm like, this came before Avatar. Gali swam, so Katara could synchronize swim. And so she does a little water orb and it cleanses him. Just watch. He just needed to take a shower.
Yeah.
Men will get so dirty and betray their friends before they shower. And I mean, honestly, if I haven't showered in a few days, I'd be willing to betray anyone. Let's be real. I feel so dirty, and I'm like, I'm a different person. So Tahu
Cullen
wakes.
who?
Cullen has no brothers.
Cullen walks in the room. We're like, what's that smell? Betrayal.
Murder. Judas.
No.
So Gali is like recharging, and she's like, have we lost our unity?
She's Percy Jacksoning.
Yeah, Percy
That's what I thought.
And so she's charging, and she's like, have we lost our unity? And Kobaka dips. She's like, have we lost our unity?
Yep.
Yeah. Lyle like screamed. She's like, have we lost our unity? Looks over, gone, and he just like, oh my god.
They do
like that was so funny.
Kopaka is the Batman of the group. To Tahu, if Tahu's Superman and Gali is
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. And then you could probably say like Lee was like the Flash.
The Flash, yeah, he's got like comedic.
Yeah. And then Pohana or whoever two other ones they decided to use to fill out the lineup that
Green
day.
Lantern
and Aquaman.
Cyborg, yeah.
Booyah.
So meanwhile, Tahu wakes up and he's happy. He's like, thank you, sister, for caring about me, even though I was trying to murder you. So he wrecked himself, so now he's checked himself. And so Jala and Takua, they arrive at Kininui near their home. And Takua's like, we walked around the whole island just for this. I'm like, well, maybe if you had accepted your destiny, multiple villages wouldn't have been destroyed. So deal with that. Be mad. And then they're like, oh, is that light? And then, no, it's Rakshi. And then more Rakshi. So now all 6 Rakshi are there. But the Toa show up in light. And because it turns out Kopaka had left to save Onawa and Pohan. So they were under the rubble and Kopaka saved them. So we referenced My Little Pony earlier, they do some friendship is magic. They resist the Rakshi together.
They T-pose.
They T-pose, yeah.
That's their friendship, is you T-pose and you stop it. And there's some fun little turn-based elemental combat here. They're like, this makes glass, or this makes
was neat.
ice.
That was actually pretty neat. Like,
yeah. I don't think the combat in this movie is entirely that bad. Like, I think it's very, like, as a kid, I was like, this is so cool. Like, this is really fun.
I think
No,
the
I think
glass
it's
was the one
bad.
cool moment.
I don't know. I was like, look at them leaping.
Well, I was saying it when you were gone talking about earlier. It's like the fire guy takes swords and puts them in the ground, and then 2 lines of fire, and then the Rakshi's like, I'm gonna stand here for like 10 seconds, like
Yeah.
sidestep, and then it doesn't show anything happening to him. It just cuts, and then he's just not standing there anymore. It's like, what were the red lines? What do they do? And
True.
then in the team up battle, they're like, hey Rakshi, hey Rakshi, hey Rakshi. And so it's just like standing, like looking at each one successively, and it's just like
It's
gonna hit
turn
me.
based.
Yeah.
They all use
Then-
taunt, and then somebody hit him in the back of the head.
Yeah.
The teamwork, but the flips, like for what they had, it being Bionicles, like it was pretty. They animated everything super well. Like what sequence, like it's fun to tease about, but like when they did something, it looked pretty sweet. Like that glass tornado. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm with it. I'm here for it.
So, but
They got some tricks up their sleeves.
the red fear one is free, and so that one is gonna attack Takua, and so Jala, forever a good friend, steps in, and he is feared to death.
Yes.
And so there's some discussion as to what that happens, and a theory is that Jala's biggest fear was death, so it made him die.
Scared to death.
He's just literally
Yeah.
scared to death. And Takua is like, no, and Jala's like, you remember your destiny. Here's the mask. And this clip is actually in our intro theme music.
Beautiful.
And Takua puts it on, and this was when this movie came out. We had like a viewing with our next door neighbors who also like Bionicles, and like we were all like so excited. And then both the oldest siblings were like, he's gonna put on the mask and become the Toe of Light, and we're like, no, that's not gonna happen. Then a second later, he puts on the mask, becomes Takanuva, Toa of Light. And he just light blasts away Rakshi and then builds a monument to his old face, not his dead friend.
Yep. It's
Yes.
his old mask. Well, like it broke it away, the stone, right? And so wait, was that hidden under there? As in like he was always chosen to do this? Or did he carve that out of this mountain just like, because I can do this now?
So technically years later in the lore, it's revealed that there are Avmatoran, which are Matoran of light, and Takua is one of those. And he was hidden away in Ta Metru, the city of fire, a few centuries ago.
Okay. Nice.
This is at the point where the lore gets very like, oh my gosh, I don't know, this is too much.
That's the point.
And that's the point for me.
Cullen.
Because to me, this is basic. There's an evil
Yeah.
guy, his little evil people, they're 6 element people, and they're trying to get a 7th light one. That's easy.
Yep.
But
I mean, it's all like straight there, but when you're getting like 30
But-
Maori based like names thrown at you at once that are also not
Yeah.
that anymore, it's that's where I think the confusion comes in. But
if
like
you-
everything's over there, like I'm following you, I
if
pick
you
it up.
step into the movie with no prior knowledge, it does not hold your hand in explaining anything that's happening.
No,
It really
I
just
know.
throws it at you. So that's why it feels like a lot of lore, but like
As foretold.
as foretold, it's actually pretty standard.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So he's feared to death. Yeah, anyway, so that he's the Toa of Light, he's Takanuva, and in the article about the Transbionicle pipeline, they pointed out that Takanuva's model was actually similar to the Gali model. So
Oh,
he's very
interesting.
femme. He's like the twink Toa.
Oh yeah. I guess because
Like just the toys themselves.
Yeah.
well, I
He
was
had
gonna
like
say
the wider hips or whatever.
Gotcha. And thus we reach the completion of the Bionicle to Trans pipeline.
Yes, apparently. I had Takanuva. He came with the motorcycle thing, but I don't.
Gotcha.
I remember his model being similar to Gali.
wait,
but
did
I
the
don't remember
motorcycle
exactly.
have his friend's
No.
face on it?
Tyler said,
No.
yep.
Wow.
Because they want
Big
you to buy the
disrespect.
friend, yeah.
You could take his face off and
and put it on.
put it on
Yeah.
the motorcycle.
Beautiful.
So
I love that the weapon as well, that he's like now just being able to single-handedly take down the Rakshi. It's like,
Yeah.
say hello to my lacrosse
Little-
stick.
Exactly.
Lasers. Beautiful callback. I mean, it does have a hammer on one side. Like it would be fairly effective for one end of it. And then you
Yeah.
can like, play
Yeah.
games with the other, you know?
So he is like, okay. we need-
Also, Golly didn't have like a physical weapon until literally like the end where she has like a battle axe,
So
right?
she has the axes and you can attach them to her feet and she can swim with them. And she also had
Okay.
propellers on
Oh,
her
the
hands
fins.
and she could
Okay.
Yeah,
like
because I was gonna say in this movie, she was just like standing around healing people, and then I'm like, oh, that bitch has a battle axe. Okay,
She
she
that's
she
has
cool.
did
two
she
battle
did
axes.
pin she did use them to pin the fire toad to the log that they healed him on.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
maybe
was
I
being
missed that.
bound down with her hand axes.
Oh, maybe I
Um,
missed that. Because
There
I
yeah.
was gonna be like,
is
where's her weapon?
there's definitely an emphasis on her like flipping and being more non-violent. Like she's being attacked and she's
Yes.
flipping away. Like, brother, this isn't you. I love those
Yeah.
memes about girl at a party to her drunk boyfriend. This isn't you, Tyler. Uh so they're like, okay, they're again a Percy Jackson. What's the Makutas will return to him. What belongs to the sea will return to the sea. So they're like the
Yeah.
Krata, the collectible snake thing, slugs that the Rakshi have inside of them. And that they go ring wraith with. Those will take us back to Makuta. So they make a special vehicle, and Holly's like, here's my dead crush. Put him on, make him a hood ornament.
Yeah.
Uh
And how did she get there originally?
I think the Gamatoran were with the Tamatoran when Takor was destroyed. So I think they're just like refugeeing nearby.
Okay,
Because
gotcha.
Gakoro
Mm.
isn't too far from Kininui geographically. And yes, I know this. I'm
I was
sorry.
gonna say only you would know this on this podcast.
I mean,
uh
slightly referenced by the fact like, oh, we walked around the whole island just to come back to close to home and be like, wear the mask. But yeah.
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 So he's like, I must go alone, but gather everyone because we're gonna awaken the Great Spirit. And so he zooms down and Holly
Unity.
Unity. Holly is there. She pulls a chip. And she's like, I stowed away. I'm gonna be your chronicler. You were the chronicler in Mata Nui Online Game 1. I was the protagonist of Mata Nui Online Game 2. So now I'm the chronicler. Um, and so he's like, all right. And then they see Makuta, and he's like, I'm gonna kill you. You're a
Well,
coward.
it's not even that they just see Makuta. Like, so they have the sequence where he's riding down there after being like, "Oh, let's go down together," and then no, I'll do it by myself. Unity. And then flies down, slams this motorcycle into the door, breaking it open with the mask of his friend, and then reaches
Yeah.
into the compartment that they put the snake thing in. And guess who's also in there? Holly. She's just in there with the snake. Like, where did you come from, child? Why are you in there? Also, are you okay? Do you have a concussion? I just slammed into a wall like 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
She's tough. She's the
She is
protagonist of
tough.
Mata Nui Online Game 2. She learned all
And
the virtues.
did not panic at all about being in the room with the snake thingy.
Yeah. She
She
has
tough.
she has purity,
Yeah.
So he's immediately like, he's like, okay, be my chronicler. Then they go into the boss lair, and Makuta's like, I'm going to kill you. You can't awaken Mata Nui. He must stay asleep. Being awake causes him pain. You didn't even warn your friend. Like, you're a coward. You're not like full of light. And it's like,
Yeah.
right, read him to filth.
Yeah. I was like, I'm sorry, but where is the lie?
Yeah, there isn't. And so he immediately says, like, gather the Taraga and the Matoran, like gather everyone. We're gonna awaken Matsumi. So I'm like, she just went down there, you're gonna send her back up. She's a
Hmm.
little person climbing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so then she goes up there and everyone's like, oh gosh, should we do this? She's like, we have to go in. Takanuva wants us down there. I'm like, why don't you just go down there initially? And they're
They
like, we
also wanted to initially and are now suddenly hesitating. Not that they've been asked to specifically.
and Holly's like, it's time for my inspirational speech.
Yep.
I love this island and Jala loved it too. Don't let his sacrifice be in vain. Unity, duty, destiny. And they're like, yeah, go off, sure. uh,
Ta-ta.
and she's like, I went through this character arc off screen in an online flash game.
Yeah.
Uh, and so
Fair.
they're like, all right, let's go. But he says everyone, and it's literally just Holly, the Toa, and the Taraka. I'm like, where are all the other villagers? They didn't have the budget. Like Cinderella's other friends in Cinderella 3. We don't have the budget for Bruno. Uh, and so they go down. Now everyone's gonna watch him get his ass handed to him in this Coley match. And
That's how you defy save the world.
save the
One
world.
cross.
Because Makuta's like,
What?
how about a Coley match?
Mm,
I win or you win, you can try and awaken Mata Nui. I lose, you lose, I kill you. And so they're flipping around. he does his special move that causes
Callback.
Makuta callback, plan payoff, baby. He calls
Chekhov's gun right there. Good literature. Good
This
literature.
Shakespearean. So they knock Makuta into the protodermis thing, and then that he pulls Takanuva in with him, and then they become Takutanuva, which is the combo of light and dark. And
So tall.
he's huge, yeah, because we had the Makuta. He was big. But his mask does not look like the one in the movie, and that always annoyed me. So he immediately is like, we're gonna awaken Mata Nui. So he raises the gate to the tunnel, and everyone's running through, and he's like, here, little one, give me the mask. And so
I'm struggling to hold this gate open. Hold on, let me one-hand it so I can take this mask from you and spend a good
Right.
20 seconds focusing.
So he summons Jala back to life,
Yep.
and then he gets crushed. And then
Yeah, they didn't want to show us the decapitation.
yeah, so he's crushed, and then Jala is like, get out of there, like 2 seconds later, and then the mask just comes out. And that's the power of friendship, baby. And they're in this chamber. I don't know how this ending didn't baffle me as a child. I don't know how wasn't like, what just happened. I don't know how this satisfied me. Maybe it didn't. I don't know, but because this ending, so Vakama's like unity, duty, destiny. Holly's unity, Jala density, and
Density.
you're my density, baby. I thought I was gonna make that joke earlier, and I never did. And he puts the light mask, which was Takua and then Takanuva, and that's destiny. And it opens the city of light. It does not awaken Mata Nui.
Yeah, that's weird. Now that you're saying that.
So that is Metro Nui. So this takes this page from Star Wars. This is setting up a prequel, where we learn about the Turaga were Toa, and they were Toa in the city of Metro Nui. They're trained by this Toa named Likon, who dies, and Vakama later gives his mask to Jala. That's how Jala has that mask. But so this is in this storyline, the 2004 storyline, which also has a movie. It's like we see Mata Nui fall asleep, we see them escape the island, and there's also a mid storyline 2005 is like where they get like Vakama and Okama, like that team of Toa get like spider morphed, and it's about like spider webs and like being bestial, and the dominatrix evil spider queen fiance. That's the third season movie. And then 2006 we go back to the current timeline where everyone is moving to Metro Nui, and we get 6 new Toa, because this is the darker, edgier thing, and there's the Paraka, and they've kidnapped all American rejects, and there's bullying the people on this island. And so the 6 new Toa are Jala becomes a Toa of fire, Holly of water, Huki, the jock guy, for stone, Kongu, who was like a bird flyer within in this movie, becomes air, Matoro, who's a translator for the ice village elder, he becomes ice, and he's like the new lead character. And then Nuparo, who's like a Matoran and stem from the earth people, becomes a earth Toa. And so they have 2 seasons. They have their darker, edgier season. They have a water season and a water prison. And then we get another season with the 6 main Toa. And then we get like 1 or 2 final seasons with like, I think, Mata Nui as our main character. And so this is just a bunch of bullshit that we learn that I'm just gonna like, I wasn't as invested in the story, and apparently sources get harder to trace the story as it goes on. But so I briefly touched on the prequel stuff. This is the afterwards stuff. But through this, we learn about Makuta is part of a group called the Brotherhood of Makuta. So Makuta isn't Mata Nui's brother. He's just sort of the Brotherhood of Makuta. So that got mistranslated, that telephone, and then they called him his brother. And so Makuta is his job, not his name. And his name is Pterodax. Makuta Pterodax. Some people call him Terry. We go to Matoran Hell at one point. We learn about Karzangi, which is Matoran. Shakespeare. We learn about Matoran Hell with Karzani, and they like fight him. Gali and Takanuva both get blogs at some point.
What?
like on the Lego website, like you could read Golly's blog or
Well,
Takanuva's
I want
blog.
the Takanuva podcast. Where are they? Next guest. Revive it.
Makuta did put Mata Nui to sleep, but the island of Mata Nui is actually the face of a giant robot. They live on the face of a giant robot, and Mata Nui is the robot that they all live inside. So they have to do their duty because they're microorganisms inside a larger being who has to take care of this robot.
What the
And so because
heck?
the plot is still up for a
I know
long
how you
time.
feel now with the time travel stuff. This
Yeah.
is my time travel right now because I don't,
To
I
me, this
can't.
is where I was like, this isn't fun anymore. Like, and so
This
they
is
Like,
too much.
like my whole question through this movie of like, so Makuta was at this point of the understanding before mistranslation from the Brotherhood of Makuta was the brother of Makuta,
of
or
Mata
well,
Nui.
of Mata Nui, but he's like got jealous and put him to sleep. But why is he asleep? And how is the bad guy just chilling under the island if the hero god is just like asleep and he's just like not doing anything about it?
Well, how that
And
got
so, or how that
mistranslated.
got mistranslated, and so he's just been sitting underground, being like, I just got to make sure he doesn't wake up. I'm not gonna actually go be evil on his what we now know is his face.
Face. So
Um, like
part of the explanation, this follows a similar path to the Trolls franchise from DreamWorks, where
I definitely know that so much better than this.
King
I'm here for
Tavi
these
or whatever.
references.
No, like the king from Trolls never tells Anna Kendrick Troll about anything until suddenly he's like, oh yeah, there's this other whole storyline of like you have a missing sister. And so it's kind of
As
like the
foretold.
Taraga.
Spoilers.
The Taraga just like make up legends to tell the Matoran who had their minds wiped when Makuta put them all to sleep because they
Oh,
used to
this
live.
is where the
Yeah. So they used to, so they
see
lived.
that I
This will
get
come
that.
up if we ever do Bionicle 2, but they're in the city.
Electric
It
Boogaloo.
was like, no. So they're in the city of Metro Nui, and the Matoran are put to sleep by Makuta because he wants to wake them up and make them all worship him. And so then the Toa
Right.
escape the Matoran to Mata Nui, and they use all their energy to awaken the Matoran, and that's how they become Taraga. And then they proceed to gaslight the Matoran. And so, but they're
Gotcha.
inside this giant robot, and when they finally wake him up after like two different characters have sacrificed themselves, uh, Makuta takes over Matanui's body, Makuta Pterodax, Terry. And so now they're all living inside the villain. And so Matanui's soul is sent to a new body where there's this whole plot. It's like a soft reboot. This is where they had movie 4. And he goes on to be a gladiator and help people in this like gladiator games. And then eventually there's a final battle between him and his old body to get his old body back, which was made by the great beings, which are referenced earlier on as like these gods. And Tahu and leads a group of people that escape Terry's body. It's the finale of Bionicle. Let's re-release our most popular toys. And so Tahu fights, and eventually they leads the fight, and they exorcise Terry from Matanui's body, but then they all leave Matanui's body. They all like get out and they live in this other planet. I think it's called Baramenga, where so now they're no longer stuck inside a body.
So when Mata Nui's soul is reincarnated somewhere and he's fighting as a gladiator, and then he has to fight Makuta
In his body.
in his body.
And I think
are they island-sized robots fighting each other in the ocean?
No,
Like,
they're huge beings fighting in a desert. And again, Mata Nui is a face, Metro Nui is a brain. And then I think they defeat
oh,
Makuta Pterodax by knocking him out with a planet or a moon. They like drop a moon on his head.
wild. Okay, so but
Wild.
like, so the mask does rise out of the ocean and is just like they are now somewhere in some larger desert. They're in
And
this island formation. They're fighting like kaiju
yeah,
battle until
kaiju
somebody
battles.
drops a moon on them like
Yeah.
Thanos.
Yes. And the Bohrok were like apparently their job was to like they're like skin cleansers, and they're trying to like cleanse the island.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
hardcore. I
Yeah.
dig it.
I was like, this is too much. See, because like before, I know you're saying that's a lot, but I'm okay. 6 villages, 6 heroes, pretty straightforward. This is where it gets to be like, I as an adult trying to like keep track of all this.
Yeah.
And like even just like when I was like, oh, what are the Bionicles? I'd try to look back and then I'd be like, what?
Okay,
Actually,
here's
I
what I'm
find that
gonna
up.
say.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
My in my defense, again, I am watching this as an adult,
Yeah.
and I have very little patience for being thrown into something that on the surface level sure is not very complex,
But they
but
don't
when you're
care to
getting
explain it.
they're not explaining things and it doesn't I'm literally like I'm a parent essentially watching this and my kid is sitting there being like, "Yeah, but this and this." And I'm like, "Yeah." Because I have no patience to focus enough to be like, "Okay, this character is this character." It's just that's what I think is makes it too complex for an adult like me is that my brain cannot comprehend all of these things without better context.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't blame the lore or the people who are writing it. I more so believe that they probably didn't have a ton of, I mean, clearly didn't have a ton of time to work out things so that it would be understandable and enjoyable for adults. This is just
Yeah.
like do stuff that the kids will like. We
Yeah.
have 13 months. Let's go.
Send it.
So that's more so like I think it's just a symptom of that like they couldn't do what they needed to do.
But this was, I mean, I do remember being disappointed a bit by the ending, or at least Chakua is talking because you were kind of like this was like all like 3 seasons or like years of Bionicle had been building up to. We're gonna get the Toa of Light, the final battle between darkness and shadow.
Oh,
We're gonna
interesting.
awaken Mata Nui, and then it's like, and there's this city we've never mentioned now. And then it was just like, no, we're doing prequel. And it was just like, this isn't
It was more setup. It wasn't an actual like
yeah.
conclusion or any
It's
big
set up for new
payoff.
toys.
Yeah.
The
And
payoff wasn't there.
as a kid who was invested in the stories of these characters, I was like, I don't
Yeah.
care about the old people's backstory.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's going on with Tahu and Gali and Jala and Holly? Like, do Jala and Holly date? And they're like, did you know we all used to live in a city that was a robot's brain? And I'm like, but are they dating?
But how do they reproduce?
Yeah.
You
So
also in terms of like the greater concept, Osmosis Jones really wasn't that far off.
I
Thinking
know.
about they come in pills and they are,
Living inside of a
they
body.
are the little fighters protecting a body ended up being the exact one-to-one reference that was happening here in
So
the
I
largest game.
think
It just took them like 5 years to get there.
they do asexual reproduction. It's just,
yeah, morphing.
They just they make a mask. They're the new mask of a
Yeah.
new person, and they find a random rock and put it on there, and then it just gets up. It's like cool.
Yeah, there you go. That makes sense. I believe that.
Apparently the plot that Mata Nui was just the face and that the myth was like a lie was apparently from the beginning. That was an initial plan. And you can kind of see the island looks like a face.
See the two eyes there, if you turn it in the nose.
Yeah, and I just kind of saw it as a kid. I noticed that, but I was like, oh, it's like a spirit. It's like a deity. It's like he's in the land. But yeah. So that's the Bionicle. The
That's
Mask
neat.
of Light.
Honestly, it's zooming out to being in a body made me like actually more interested in it. I find that kind of fascinating of being the smaller part of a larger whole. All of a sudden, like the scale of your entire existence has now been blown so out of proportion. What are you gonna do with that? Have fun.
It's like
What does a chronicler do? Like, is this person going to be writing? Like, is Takua writing things?
Yeah, they have Takor has a wall of history. You can see it matching the online game too. You go inside this big hall, and like Takua is like has like a wall of like hieroglyphics that he like puts new stones in.
Okay, here's what I think. I think that this movie expects you to have the backstory of Bionicle so far. That's why I get into this and I'm like, what?
Yeah,
so,
that's
because that's why I'm like,
it's
well, what's
not
a chronicler? Why didn't I see this cool wall?
It's not a point of entry, and I think part of it is a budgetary thing where it's like they don't show like because the Flash games, especially like they do have some really cool art of the villages and like how they work and like depth into their culture, but they've expected you to engage with everything on a level at some point. So they
Yeah.
don't, and part of it is because this is like essentially season 3 of the storyline that this when we get the first movie.
And they have the storyline going through comics,
Books,
books,
games,
games, and
Flash
then
stuff, like web things.
and then
They
this
probably had
was like a
pamphlets in
made
the tubes to read that had some lore in them too.
right.
Yeah.
And so then this movie is basically like it was made for VHS or DVD, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's obviously going to be not of the highest, story
Yeah.
quality because of budgetary things, right? It's just like another form of which they're telling a story that came in multiple forms.
Yeah.
That's well, what's interesting is you're like, oh, Marvel's gaslighting me. I think
Yeah.
that this movie is gaslighting me in the same sense that
Yeah.
like I'm
Yeah.
supposed to know this lore, right? So I think it because like again, like the Marvel movies, they end up taking from the comics and making their
Mhm.
own lore, but like they have Easter eggs and references to the comics still.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
I
I think it's just like a different version of the Bionicle universe, like
yeah.
or the idea, I guess. Media idea is that you're telling the story, the same story in multiple forms, and you're
Yeah.
expecting people once you get to this film to
Yeah.
have
But
that's
like
really interesting.
I think the thing with Marvel that it's like Marvel is expecting like an adult with a job to keep track of all this.
Well,
And
yeah.
like it's technically like movies and TV shows, like because the comics are their own separate thing.
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
like it's just
But
too much. And like people talk about it like it's something I should be able to keep track of. Whereas, like, yes, I remember a bunch of stuff about Bionicles, but again, like I do lose track of the lore at some point. And
I
I don't
don't think
I don't think it's
I don't,
normal for like I was a
yeah,
child. So I didn't have real
anything.
responsibilities and I couldn't
Yeah.
focus on schoolwork. And so I would just like think about Bionicle.
I think that like the Marvel movies and then maybe potentially in essence the Bionicle movies are not for just like a general liker of Bionicle or a general
Yeah.
liker of Marvel. It is for people who are going to dedicate the time to
Yeah.
the lore.
I
Yeah.
think with Marvel though it didn't start that way and now it
No,
became
no,
that
no,
way.
no.
And so that is the I
Yes.
think the
Because
key
those are the people who are going to
change.
spend the
Yeah.
most money.
Yeah.
What had
So they're
happened
going to
was
service them. What happened was
this movie is Infinity War. You've got a
Yeah.
bunch of things coming together, but also you don't get the conclusion that is Endgame. Like you've got a lot of stuff, and then you get a left turn into something where you're like getting to a very like climactic point, and like there's like an ending there, but there's like more that it's pushing towards. So
Yeah.
like you're nearly there, but let's look at some prequels, and then you learn
Yeah.
that it's a mask afterwards and a whole body
Yeah.
that you're in.
Years
Um,
later.
years
Like
later,
I was now in high school when it's officially revealed they're in a robot body. I go from
yeah.
being a
Yeah.
third grader.
Dang.
Yeah.
Were the Flash games free?
Yes.
Okay, because they're probably web-based, right?
But also like
Um,
your computer would be like, oh my gosh, this is so much.
yeah. So
Rest in peace, Flash.
Yeah.
yeah,
RIP, I think AI exists. It was made to, or they got rid of Flash to pave the way for AI. That's my, people will tell me you're wrong, that's incorrect. And I'm like, because they got rid of those like doll maker games that people would play to make their own little characters. And now they just steal other people's art to make it on AI. And I'm
I,
like,
I don't know how Flash and AI tie together at all.
that's
That's
my
like that.
thing. That's my probably
yeah.
incorrect headcanon.
So I'm also going to say that Bionicle probably did not start with this in mind either of like like it started as toys,
Yeah.
right? So like then they're like, "Oh, this is popular, so we're going to give it even more lore because kids were
Yeah.
eating it up." So like yeah, it's so interesting because like I think of this Marvel thing as like, oh, it's something new at how they're catering to just like or not catering, well, catering. They're making things now with the intent of like people are consuming it the most rapidly, paying the
Mhm.
most are people who are dedicating the time. But that's been happening for a while, clearly with
Yeah.
Bionicle, is that like they made this movie for
for
Bionicle
fans.
heads like you.
Yeah,
Right?
voodoo boneheads of Voodoo Island.
They made Endgame because people were fucking crazy about Marvel.
Yeah.
They kept going with Game of Thrones and did all these spin-offs because of people who are so obsessed with Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Like, it's, man, capitalism. There you go.
So I guess kind of to analyze this movie,
This was my fantasy.
So do we root for our protagonist, and who is our protagonist? So Takua is our protagonist, and I'm gonna say I don't. He's like my least favorite because he's so irresponsible.
I don't even think there was. I don't even know if I liked Jala that much either. But I guess he was like doing stuff. Takua was like, I don't want to do stuff. I'm just being forced to do stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I get Destiny as a Destiny thing, but like of all of them, why was it his destiny? Why
Well, later we learn because for biological reasons, because he's a light guy.
He's one of the leaves. Okay,
but this movie isn't positing that. This movie is like he's chosen, and it was kind of because he was a wanderer, like he didn't fit in anywhere.
Though it does definitely make sense they have chroniclers. It's honestly weird that there aren't more chroniclers and wanderers as a people whose history has been entirely lost. Like the devotion to write history and to discover what had happened seemed like it'd be a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
More so than just like one guy roaming around an island who apparently can do it in some number of hours. I don't know.
Did Takua do something to earn the mask? Like he just realized,
he's curious.
Oh yeah, I've been chosen.
He's Rum-Tub Tiger was a curious cat.
Because I would think that to be a Toa of light, you would need to embody the spirit or qualities of light. Like, because what Golly is like purity in that that village, like what, like this is the city of light, right? So like what is their quality? Does he match up to it? Because
if not though, sorry, go ahead, Cullen. I got thoughts.
In the online game, which is not in this movie, so you can't. I hadn't played it when I first saw this movie, right? So it's like, but you could see that because in the online game, he like builds a party of Matoran to help the Toa from each village, and so he's like a uniter because they're all kind of isolated at this point, and he's like willing to like talk to new people. So that's like light in a way. But in this movie, all you see is someone who's like irresponsible and constantly fucks over his best friend.
Yeah.
He's the one you're friends with, and then you're like, oh, they kind of like, I need to stop talking. I need to stop texting Takua. Like, he always abandons me drunk at a party and like takes his Uber, and then like I'm alone.
It was
his
idea to go to the party, and it was his idea to drink. He didn't drink as much as I did, and then he took the Uber home without asking me and left me there.
And no like more he keeps asking me to go play lacrosse, and we're on like the national team now. So it's like, but so how much like from the movie alone, it's like how much does he actually embody the light if everybody has their own embodiment, and he doesn't really outside of that context. And then he puts on the mask, and I assume his character changes a bit in the way of like what he's willing to do, which might be the character development, or does the mask then is the mask what imbues the personality that the mask is supposed to? So is that him anymore, or is that just Takanuma? He's wearing a mask and is now he's wearing the mask from The Mask, some Jim Carrey. Like he's not him anymore. He is solely the light because that is what has been deemed to anybody who puts on the mask becomes.
Like if we take off the fire dude's mask, is he not still like
that fiery?
Yeah,
well, his technically is the mask of the Kanoe How. I know it is the mask of Shield. His mask gives him the force field power.
But it doesn't imbue him with he's inherently
fire.
Okay. So
the mask of light, the Kanoe of Oki. Yeah.
What's the value of the fire village?
Courage.
he's courageous.
Yeah.
But is that his mask giving him
That's
that,
his.
or is it him?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's-
so he sounds like but he has natural firepower on his own outside of it. And
Yeah.
then the mask is just like you also can use force fields. It's like it's your alternate
Yeah.
weapon.
They like stacked powers kind of oddly with that.
Yeah,
So what does
I
the
don't know
light
about Takua.
mask
Yeah.
I'd
do
have to
about
do the
Takanuma? Because
go
like
to
what's his inherent power? If what is the mask of light's power? The light beam or like being tall
yeah.
now?
Being tall now.
Like what is his inherent power that he gets that is also just if the light mask is just like here's a bonus
Leadership.
auxiliary power.
He's showing
Leadership.
the way because he's the one who like
Yeah.
basically makes
Opens
the
the
ending
light.
happen.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
it but
Gets
it's
people
like, is
out.
he faking it till he makes it? He's like, this is how light is supposed to be? Or is he inspired by the death of his bestie?
Yeah, that's really weird.
Yeah. And then our shipping question. Do we ship Jala and Holly?
I think at first I did not because I was like, these are children. I don't understand what's happening. And now that I understand that they're
Yeah.
adults, I think at the end, because it's less of like a surface level thing that we get with them flirting, now it's more like she very much cared for him.
Yeah.
Like now I can see that like, okay, potentially off screen, they had something deeper. So I ship that for sure.
Yeah. We know where I stand.
Your OTP.
I think she'd use him as a hood ornament, just I think the thought's there.
My thing with the Toa is because it's like they're kind of the protagonists, but in a way the Matoran for the games or the movies tend to be the main characters. But now for the Toa, how many of them are actually characters? Because I feel like really Tahu and Gali are the only ones that serve like have like any kind of narrative layer. Kopaka and Liwa are kind of like the next tier and like where they have like a personality. And then Onawa and Powhatan have the same personality and are barely there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real, it's only two of them are even like relatively
characters.
I don't know, they're fleshed out anyway.
Yeah. At least on the same level as like Takua and Jala.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
That is interesting.
And what do you think of our Makuta antagonist?
He's tall.
He's spooky. He is very basic.
Basic bitch.
It's very interesting that his thought to his final showdown is like I'm gonna beat you at the sport that you're on the national team for. I'm gonna be throwing protodermis at you and trying to kill you with it. I don't know what the thought process was there. Is he aware that it's a mask? Or he's on the face of the full like one because there's a mask in the room with him, like the big green, but that's separate. Like, what does that belong to?
That's just like that's where because when you that's the mask Makuta wears when they meet him in the online game. And in that one, he is much more of like a supernatural thing. And it's like eventually he went from being this kind of big bad, like almost like a Lucifer type being that's like it's under like like it's in the shadows, like we don't know what it is, to like big guy in lair.
Yeah.
And I think like that was actually something that someone pitched. There's a sequence in Lord of the Rings where they're gonna have Sauron come out and like fight with Aragorn, and they cut that because it's not canon, but it's like this thing that's a temptation to do because like the big bad versus the big hero, but also by like when you make evil like a solid person, it becomes like less terrifying often.
Yeah.
Like I think it works in some like I think Maleficent kind of works. I mean, it's her downfall, but like because our heroes seem to be much less powerful than her. But if you have a big super tough guy and then the other one just becomes a big ass robot, it's easier. I think it's better to have something that's like harder to distinguish. I just think
it becomes less like existential and like intangible what the expanse of this power that you're fearing is. If you put it into a body, it becomes more relatable. And more I guess more relatable in a way. I don't know.
Like the devil in John Milton's Paradise Lost.
Sure, yeah.
I know what that is.
Yeah.
I think my issue with the like, well, let's play a game, let's make a deal version of like the fight is, I think it's just like, it's more about proving skill rather than it is being able to prove that you are more powerful than that being.
Or like pass a test, a moral test of some kind.
Yeah, so it's like I think it's just like less about the combat and more about prowess, skill, character. And I think maybe much of the combat being not as like violent is kind of, it is more about that skill, that prowess. So
That's a
that
good
it's
analysis of that, yeah.
interesting. But to me it is, I guess, dissatisfying just because I'm like, but I get why they have it.
It is interesting. Like, that's a really good thought process for that. And then right at the end of it, it goes from a test of skill to I'm gonna jump on your face and tear your head off. It's just like, I need your mask. Like, just give me a kiss, and then they just fall back into the liquid. So it immediately devolves to like,
yeah,
I'm gonna grab you. Which I don't
and
know.
who
Does that
grabs
mean
who?
Takanuma jumps at?
Oh, he's like, let's see behind the mask.
See behind the mask and
Yeah.
jumps at it and goes to try and grab his face, and they're just like in the air until they fall back into the protodermis. But also, like, what does that mean for a mask being taken off? Is that actually like painful, or is that just like an expressive thing? Or like because before Takanuma becomes Takanuma, he doesn't take off his mask and put it on. He just puts it on over it.
Masks
and then...
are kind of like a super powered clothing item, but you always wear it. Like, you always wear it on your, because like you're like naked without it.
And it's expressive, kind of like the mask for
big blue
Deadpool
eyebrow.
and also for like Spider-Man and stuff.
Which
like
is
it's
why the movie
part of you.
For their animation, they're like, the masks have to move, because like the
Yeah.
toys, the mask doesn't move, but they're like, in order for them to emote.
Yeah. But I think that's an interesting prospect to connect kind of what John is saying. Is it like, is it painful? Is it a part of you? Or is it just an expression? Like, yeah, that is interesting.
And is it at that point worth falling into protodermis to keep on your head? And then
he's like, well, everyone was gonna see his naked face.
Yeah.
Embarrassing. He's like, I have acne.
I was gonna say that too.
I'm rusting.
Yeah, I've got rust.
Because I've been living in this damp protodermis.
I was made by Tesla.
There you go. And up until that point, he almost has like supernatural like projection of himself across the island. In the shadow, his eyes appear and is like speaking within the mind. And at that point, he's just like, I'm a tall guy, and I don't know what to do about that.
Because they wanted to sell the toy.
Yeah.
Which we had, it was big. It was
well, I mean, it makes sense that he has a body and stuff, but like any semblance of what power he may have as a boss was virtually non-existent. He got hit by like the trick shot or whatever, and then
so I guess the big question was that your fantasy.
Absolutely. I loved it.
Please explain to me this question first.
So it's a double
to the podcast.
It's a double pronged. It's basically like, do you like the movie? And also, like, is this like a fantasy you would enjoy living out? Like, if you were to go on like a magical journey.
Yeah, if you could be a Bionicle, would you want to be a Bionicle? I don't think I really, well, I guess I do, because I did answer that way for like time travel month. I think I would not want to be Bionicle because I don't quite understand what they are still. But I mean, I'm looking out in the All Lady Village. I think that would be fun.
Yeah, they live in like seaweed houses on top of the water.
Talk about robo boobs. Okay, so Golly, her appearance, again, her chest plate isn't big, her butt plate isn't big, but the only thing is there's like a crease in her chest plate. But it's like normal size. It's not like bazongas or anything, but it's like, oh, okay. It's like very subtle physical gendering, for lack of a better term, that they're doing with her, that it's like, it's enough for me to know that like, yes, she is the woman aside from just like the voice and obviously her role being feminine. But I thought that was tasteful, I guess, to say the least, because obviously like I've seen cartoon characters that should not have breasts that do.
Lola
And
Bunny. Yeah.
we're looking at you, Lola Bunny, being curvaceous. So yeah, I also think that's like also really interesting that yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think of the movie, Hannah?
Oh, what do I think of the movie? I already told you what I think of the movie. I think that it is something that is expecting way too much of me for a made for VHS and DVD movie. But again, it's made for kids who are deeply entrenched in this lore, already have played the games and stuff. So I'm coming into it with absolutely no knowledge, and I'm like, I do not accept any of this. Um, but I do, I guess, understand the appeal. And I think for like a toy that has a lot of like lore and IP around it is pretty interesting because I'd say like a GI Joe toy and like it's just about war. That's not interesting. This at least has something kind of different from other toys going for it. So, not my fantasy in any way, but I get why people would like it. Yeah.
John?
Okay. Would this be a movie that I would continue to watch on a yearly annual basis because that's how much I love it? No. Not even so. I think 20 years was a good basis of time to spend in
Yeah.
between then and there. It had the vibes. Like it was enjoyable, got this like coming together kind of deal. But it's also thinking of the movies I watched as a child fun to pick apart for that reason.
Yeah.
And I lovingly do so. Being like, this is dumb and this is silly. Let's think about
Yeah.
this and why this doesn't make sense at all. But like, I enjoyed that as a kid, being like, I loved this, or this was really cool, and kind of to see. I enjoy it for that much. The movie Quaid is in there. Would I be a Bionicle? Yes, I would be a Bionicle. Absolutely. I would absolutely take this as my
Which
fantasy. That'd be
village would you
fun.
want to live in?
Ooh, well, considering one of them's underground and the other one is in lava, I'll go with the Forest Village.
Yeah.
I'll
They
hang
live
out,
in the
talk with you.
treetops.
Live in the treetops. I'll fly.
Airfly?
I do a decent Yoda impression, and I can talk with
Yeah.
bears that apparently aren't as hostile as one may think initially.
You just have to call him Sister Bear. Yeah.
Sister
Uh,
Bear.
I so watching this, I'm like, this is not good. But like even when we did watch shitty movie, like watch for shitty movie night, we were like compared to so many other things we watched, like I'm like, this we were like, there's a plot, there's discernible characters,
Yeah.
like and now it's like I just think I just have to say yes because I love this universe and something about the early days of it before it got too heavy into the lore. There's something like I find really appealing of the fact that they're like robots, but they're not in like vague feature town. They're in like a Polynesian island.
Mhm.
And I think I liked the characters, and I would be a Bionicle. And so tying into that, do you have any guesses as to who I was for
Ooh.
Halloween?
Hmm.
So you weren't the red one.
Yeah, we know that much.
Are
Um.
you were one of the Toas, right? One of the
No.
6 Toas? Oh,
Oh, see, I was just thinking
okay.
specifically out
You
of this
Jalo?
list.
Yeah,
Okay, there you go.
I was Jala.
Okay.
I thought he was a cool thing. I was obsessed with him. He was my
Okay,
favorite one. And I think
good
also
pick,
because
Hannah.
he had a girlfriend. I thought that was cool. Or he had a
Yeah.
love interest.
Okay,
Nice.
solid.
And he was responsible
You're
and
like Jala
brave.
fucks. I like him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I came to this realization that a lot of like when I had to pick my favorite X-Men, because like, who's your favorite X-Men? I'd be like, Cyclops. Like I would pick the one that was like hot. I was like,
Interesting. Yeah.
but not necessarily because of like, oh, I like have a crush on. It. I was like, oh, I want to be the hot guy.
Right.
And so
Okay,
he
but
was this universe's version of the hot guy to
so
me.
then
Hot boy Jala.
so you
What
would
did I
be in the Fire
village?
Nation, I almost said.
The Fire Nation attack. I think I would be.
Yeah.
I always pick the fire people.
Interesting.
Yeah. Uh yeah, so that's what I just love about Bionic. And then because there's like the iconic lines, I'll be practicing, you were about scratches. And then one that we also think of all the time is when Kopaka goes like, surprise. And like I'll want to reference that sometimes, like it's a Disney movie and people would get the joke, and then I'm like, oh no, no one will know what you mean when that comes out of your mouth. So I like catch it.
You have 2 more people now who will understand.
Yeah, there you go.
So when I
Spreading.
text you, surprise, now you know. Yeah, so that's the Bionicle Mask of Light.
We talked
2003.
about it for double the time of the movie at least.
Yes.
When we started taking the play-by-play, and I was like, oh, we'll go movie length right now.
But we talked about the movie and
The whole
lore,
universe
the
of
prequel
lore.
lore, the universe lore, the other movies, post-quel lore. My words. So we did talk about a lot. So I guess I mean, that means we never have to cover Bionicle again.
Yeah. I do have a random passing thought that I have remembered since of like my previous understanding of Bionicle. And I made a joke earlier about how Bionicles are made by consuming the children that are
like
on
Five Nights at
Yes,
Freddy's.
exactly. I suddenly remembered that in college, Cullen, I believe it was your senior year, my junior year, I was doing rounds as an RA, and we had to check rooms for like Thanksgiving kind of stuff. I opened this door, and it's a corner room. There's 3 windows in this room, and I open, and there is nothing in this room except for one out of the 2 beds. There's one with bed sheets, and then every horizontal surface in this room is covered in Bionicle. There are no clothes. There's no study materials. There's no backpack. There's merely sheets and a pillow, and then like at least 60 Bionicle of varying sizes.
This is
from
where
like
Cullen stays.
from like 3 inch tall to like foot tall Bionicles. The windowsills, the 2 desks,
Oh my gosh.
the
They were
fortified shelves,
consumed by
the night
Bionicles.
shelves, but there was no trace other than sheets that there was a human living in this room. And I swear, this is also talking about this with Katie, my significant other. We were talking about like, what is the lore? What is your understanding of the lore, Katie? And she went on this rant about like in 2015 this happened. They got the stars aligned and like, oh, there's 7 stars in this movie. Like she hit beat for beat, as well as this was in 2015, with the relaunch of the series in October of 2015, which is when this check was in this building. They consumed this child and they rebooted the series. New Bionicle were made. This is the true lore of the Bionicle.
It is so crazy. I am literally picturing that. There was only one person living there.
Yep, it was a room for 2 people, but there was only one person who had been living there. And I wish I would have checked. I should have found out who that was, and I never did. They were erased from the world.
Toa Tahu, yeah.
That's
wild.
Crazy.
Yep.
Wow.
So you really were the perfect guest because you had seen the birth of Bionicle reboot.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on, John.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been a delight.
Listeners, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok, Not My Fantasy Pod. Comment below with anything you know about a Bionicle. Just put it down there that you knew before this video.
Absolutely.
Or
your favorite.
You can
Bionicles.
also, if you could be a Bionicle, which village would you be from? That's what I want to know.
Yes.
That should be a BuzzFeed quiz.
I'll make it.
But hold
or
on.
if you could have a mask that
Which
had a particular power, what would your mask do?
Which Bionicle are you? Okay, so it's on a couple different quiz sites, but none of them BuzzFeed. So we do need to change that.
You do need to change that. Let's
Absolutely.
become BuzzFeed contributors. Well, yeah. Please, if you're watching on YouTube, hi, how are you? Time to smash that like button.
Smash it.
Hit the bell.
Hit the bell to get notifications and subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe to us. And then also, if you are listening on iTunes, Spotify, please rate the podcast. It helps us climb up in the charts, helps us find other awesome listeners like you. And please leave us a comment with your review. You can talk about Bionicles there. You can talk about whatever you want. You can say how amazing we are. You can just say hi. You can just use emojis. it's pretty much up to you. So again, just give us that review. We'd really, really appreciate it. And then next week
We're talking
is dragons.
Dragons.
Because Moana has technically already happened.
Yeah. So we are, I don't
All
want
dragons? Just dragons in general?
We
That's
have
wonderful.
a couple movies, a couple films
Okay.
that we're gonna
Beautiful.
explore.
And I don't think we've officially just decided which one we're doing first.
Yeah.
But we're talking about dragons. And you know what? If you want to sound off in the comments below, which dragon movie do you want us to talk about? Because if it's not on our list now, it could be later in the future. So there you go.
All right, and with that, listeners, thank you for hearing the tale, the legend of the Bionicle.
You know what? The Maori people had every right to sue them.
Bye.